Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. We are now 4 hours into an epic interview with the Laing family. The first 4 hours were with Kelly and Heather Laing, where we talked about their Mormon stories growing up in Idaho Falls, Idaho, but also as talking about Kelly's career as a naval officer in the U.S. Navy and as a submariner or as a commander of naval submarines, nuclear submarines, and all the amazing experiences that Kelly and his wife Heather had being Orthodox, active, believing, faithful Mormons and serving in the U.S. Navy, including 6 years of service in a submarine floating who knows where, doing who knows what, but also serving at the U.S. Naval Academy and everything in between. It's an epic, powerful, gripping story of patriotism, of faithfulness, of family. And if you haven't watched that, pause this, go watch that or listen to it, and then come back. But where we left off was after this distinguished career, there was kind of this parallel story happening where Kelly and Heather Laing have 4 children. Heather's raising these 4 children, sometimes alone, while Kelly's off to sea and serving in his military career. And, these 2 of these 4 children, Britton and Mason, were growing up doing the super Mormon life, and at some point became awakened to the fact that they were gay. And we have had lots of LGBTQ people here on Mormon Stories talking about their stories. We've never had that I remember, 2 gay siblings talking about it. So it's one thing to be a gay Mormon. It's another thing to have a sibling who's gay and to be raised as a Mormon. And that's what this second part is going to be about. So without any further ado, Britton and Mason Laing, welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. Thank you for having us.
So who's Britton? Who's Mason?
I am Mason. No, I'm teasing. I'm Britton. I'm Britton, and this is Mason.
I'm Mason.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to add or take away from my introduction?
I'm 16. We both live in Silver Hill, Washington.
Well, soon to be. I just finished. I'm moving right now. I'm in the process. My car is packed up at the moment. It has everything I own, and I'm heading back home to live with everyone. So.
But yeah, Brent, how old are you?
Huh? How old am I? I'm 22. Yeah, I've had a good life. I am alive. I'm healthy. I don't know. I don't know what to say here, but with that, but yeah.
And we're going to be talking about kind of what it's like to grow up in this military family, to realize you're gay as a Mormon. Britton, we're going to be talking about you becoming a missionary and what that was like, you coming out to your Mormon family. And then, of course, Mason, you're having your own journey, knowing at some point realizing your older brother was gay and how you dealt with that as well. So it's going to be epic. And, of course, we have with us the one, the only Kara Burrell joining us as co-host of this interview. Hey, Kara.
Hey, John.
How you enjoying the Laing family so far?
Oh, gosh. I don't say the word speechless a lot, but I really am.
Stop.
This is a powerhouse of just awesomeness that I am in this room right now. So I'm so excited to get into this part now.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for being my co-pilot or co-wing commander or whatever you would say in the naval. What's the equivalent? Co-pilot in a Navy? Okay.
For flight, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being here, Carrie. You're awesome.
Thanks.
Okay. So Britton I guess, Britton, you were born first.
Yeah. So I remember my birth fondly. I'm not teasing. No.
You just heard 4 hours of your parents. What would you add to that story from your perspective?
So, it's thinking about it, it's kind of hard because it's fun. It's interesting how our stories overlap there. I know for me, and I'm trying to think of where to start. So I was born in Logan, Utah, and I was there throughout that entire family growing up, being in the military. And it's interesting being a military kid, how I very much took it as an identity. It was almost equal parts. I'm Mormon and I'm a military kid. And it's interesting growing up and having parents that do that, having dad there and not there. And so something I just add for kind of a topic that came up with my mom and dad was how did mom do when dad was gone? And to be quite honest, like I enjoyed that time. Like I really enjoyed. I mean, I miss my dad, of course, because I mean, as a kid, you're like, where's dad at? But my mom, she did a great job of doing fun things. Like particularly most of the deployments I remember were in Hawaii. And I remember we do fun things all the time. She'd take us to the museum. She'd take us out to get ice cream at McDonald's. That's a big tradition in the family. We do. We stay at McDonald's. So it's a very, very happy childhood in the fact that even though the dad wasn't always there, I knew and I understood like, oh, he's out doing something for our country. And so that meant a lot to me. And I was happy to be along for the ride. And I feel like it's not until like, for me, I lived in my own world until I was 12, maybe 11, 12, because I have a very active imagination. And so I was in Britton land for a long time.
What?
In Britton land. That's Britton land, right. Like my own head. And so during that, I mean, I would play pretend and not care or think twice about what was going on in the world. I was oblivious child. So
do you have Mormon memories as a child?
Yeah. So and then it gets to 12. So that's the thing. I do, like as a kid, I remember thinking, oh, it's fun to like go to this church house where I can run around and be there and not care. I remember doing service projects, for like Eagle Scout projects with people, and we were very involved in scouting and like Boy Scouts even before, Cub Scouts. That's what I'm thinking of. And yeah.
Primary.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite primary songs?
Oh yes. That's the other thing too. I was very much so like, I loved primary, like any songs, like I was very much so singing at the top of my lungs. Like I loved everything about like, I tried to be like Jesus. I was very much so like, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy like the fun, like do as I'm doing songs. I was more like, I like the thematic songs.
The Temple.
I love the Sea Temple. Yeah. I mean, it was one of my favorite songs. So I was very much in the church. I mean, that was my life. I mean, Jesus and trying to be like him and doing what's right and treating people kindly. So that was very much Little Britain growing up. Until then, or I don't know how far you want me to go in. Well, story,
let's try and follow a timeline a bit for both of you.
Yeah.
So, I guess we just heard your mom talk about her being raised in more of a relaxed, open-minded kind of Mormon family, but then your dad talking about a super strict, kind of more harsh Mormon family. What was the tone of your Mormon family as you remember it starting as a kid?
To be quite honest, because of the church, it was, if it was a spectrum, it was closer to my dad's.
So it was strict.
It was far, like
it was strict.
Yeah, we read scriptures every night. We had family prayers. We memorized all the articles of faith. Like we do 2 every night, and then also do scripture mastery when we started seminary. It was very much so, like down the lines. And my dad was very spiritual. And so we'd have family-owned evenings where he would present lessons and tell mission stories or tell other things. And so it was very much so down the line, like we do all the things the church says. And it's interesting because in my perspective, I don't know about Mason, I didn't see it so much as my dad was strict. Like it would be terrible if I screwed up something in the church. Like repentance to me was like, oh, I can always fix something I mess up. But it was more internalized. Like I didn't care what other people thought of me. I was worried about me. Like I thought I will be evil, terrible, wrong if I do something terrible. So
what were the do's and don'ts as a kid?
It was very much so. Number one rule I feel like in our house is respect and love mom. Like that's
love mom and respect her. Honestly, that's so true.
Yeah, it's like the one, the only. Yeah. And I don't know, kind of a sad effect of that, and I'm grateful for it. But unfortunately, that my dad very pressed that really hard. But because of that, I do think it affected my relationship with my father.
With our father,
because we were taught we have to love and respect mom at all costs, and so sometimes
that cost was dad.
Yeah.
Meaning what?
You go.
Like the more the attention would be put on my mother, like everything we did was like to like so we could get approval from mom and everything. And lots of times that was like the disciplining part of it, aspect of it was done by like dad too. And so it was just
kind of a good cop, bad cop thing, a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But obviously not the intensity of like my father's situation at all. But it was, a good cop, bad cop situation.
Yeah. And so that's like the first and foremost rule that happened there. And of course now it's different, and we're learning and growing into different people, but that was really hard.
As I'm thinking about my own family, if the dad's gone a lot and the mom is kind of primarily raising the kids and is always there can be this dynamic of like what mom says really matters and kind of dad doesn't matter as much sometimes. And then if the dad has an ego or is used to kind of power and authority, and I'm kind of projecting here a little bit, that can make the dad feel like he's not respected or not valued, maybe feel defensive. Was that or not kind of what you guys experienced?
That's no shade, but like, that's pretty accurate. Like honestly, mom and like all of us children had like a good relationship with mom and everything, and then dad would like come home and he had like a long day and everything, and nothing bad ever would happen. But it was more of like like you said, like I guess he didn't see us as like respecting him as much, and so it was like I bet it was scary. It was scary for him to see that his like own children weren't like communicating as much
with him.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing when you're a dad and you want that love. You want that love and not so much respect, like, because respect in the sense is like just that affection that mom is getting. And so you're like, crap, how do I do that? And I mean, you do the best with the tools you got. Yeah. And sometimes those tools aren't always the best tools for the job. And so,
sorry.
There you go.
Also like, and obviously now we can like empathize and we can be like, hey, like let's put ourselves in dad's shoes, like what's happening in his brain. But like as children, we didn't see that. Like we couldn't do that. And so a lot of it growing up was like, scared. Like it was, I was scared of my father. Like I was scared to like be around him because I thought that everything I was doing was going to might like set him off or something like that. So yeah.
And that's hard. And it's crap too, because he's doing something amazing for his country and for us. And then that also leads to a guilt spiral too, that I believe the church has a lot to do with. It's like, I love this person and I want to be around them, but then you start to feel bad because you can't be what they want you to be. And so you internalize it instead of putting on them.
Yeah.
So that'll come into your story. Go ahead, Mason.
It was just like Britton said, like you internalize it and you start thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person because I don't want to be around dad. When like in reality, it wasn't dad's fault. It wasn't our fault. It was like just everything that's shaped us, that's happened to us and everything. And obviously there are some like things that go along that we choose and stuff, but like a lot of things shape how we act. And as children, we just couldn't see that. So
Let me ask you, I'm thinking of some movies I watched growing up where there were kind of military dads, and there's kind of this stereotype of the military dad, strict and stern and harsh and yelling and barking. And I know obviously it's hard because your parents are in the room and you want to be thoughtful and respectful. I think they would say they want you to be honest and open, and they're not going to take super offense. So like, to what extent was he kind of that stereotypical mean, harsh, strict dad versus trying to overcompensate by being extra loving and kind and soft? Or
do you want to? Oh,
each of you.
Oh no, you go first.
Okay. It to a certain extent, it was kind of like that. It was like, actually, our dad was very good about not yelling at us. There were like instances, obviously, where every parent, like, I don't like children, so I understand it. I don't like. I understand why like they would yell at us and stuff like that. But to another extent, like he never wanted to seem like the bad guy, and so it'd be like. It'd come to like he would do everything. Like he loves us so much to the point where he'd do everything he could to make us happy. But with that comes like if he got angry at us or something like that, but he didn't want us to be seen as a bad guy, and so he'd we'd do tons of fun stuff together, like go to trampoline parks and everything like that. And sometimes like for my father, it was that, oh, I'm doing this so to get like a good reaction out of it. And so it was more of like, oh, we have to give a good reaction to everything he gives us. And like it comes with like a guilt aspect to it where we feel if something happens.
Having a crap day.
We're having a crap day or something like that. Like you don't want to be ungrateful we are not ungrateful at all. Like we we're so grateful for everything that like our father's done for us. But like if we were to do little tiny things, like it'd come off as
what I would say is it's a matter of, and I'm going to talk about this later too with the church. It's a matter of we base our self-esteem on what other people think of us.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when you become dependent upon other people, how they perceive you and what they're feeling, it's this terrible cycle for you and the other person. Because for you, if they're ever think poorly of you, it's immediately internalized. And if the other person ever they feel this guilt, this weight that they have to constantly hold up their own emotional health and like physical health and the other person's. And so I think that's the hardest thing. It's a matter of, I mean, for me, my father was not treated as he should have been as a kid. And that breaks my heart.
So we're talking about multi-generational trauma a little bit, right?
Honestly. And I see, and my dad is also very much the personality type of, it's either 0% or 100%. Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah.
And I have that in me too. But I know that I see lots of the things that he's done for us as a family, like vacations, the experiences, the beaches, trips, the hiking, all of that was an attempt because he loves us. And he didn't get that as a kid, and he wanted to give that to us, the things that he never got. And so and it means a lot to me. And now I can see that. But as a kid, you're in the moment, you're tired and you're hot and you're hungry and you're like, crap, I don't want to do this, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to make someone feel bad.
You know, I spent a little bit of time with your dad just like last weekend, and I saw this movie, A Few Good Men, with Jack Nicholson, and in that case, Jack Nicholson was kind of a bad actor. In the end, but at the same time, he makes this point about you want us on the wall, you need us on that wall. And I don't know if you remember that, but I thought about the fact that Kelly has a strong personality, but like that's what you probably need to command a nuclear submarine, with the intelligence and the intensity and the focus and all of that. Like, we need people like that, and the country and the military and even the church is going to likely raise and groom someone like that, because so it would even reinforce a lot of these behaviors that are needed in one setting, and then that may or may not always be optimal for a totally different setting, and so it's kind of a complex conundrum.
Yeah.
That we need these personalities, and that can sometimes make these personalities not optimal, right?
I will say our father is very good at like taking things from, obviously no one's perfect and some things would carry over from work, but my dad's very good at like seeing things that like he does, and he's like, oh, like that's very militaristic of me, like I should take a step back and maybe we shouldn't do that anymore, and changing his view of doing like disciplining and stuff like that.
My father isn't rigid.
He's what?
He's not rigid. When he realizes that he needs to change something, he does it immediately. He's awesome like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I really liked how much he talked about his love of people as well. And so I would assume that he's at least on the spectrum of being like such a people person and not as stereotypical as maybe like some movies that come to mind. Yeah. Like he had I feel like the way that he talked about how much he loves people first, hopefully that comes across more. I don't know.
Very much so. Yeah.
I was at Olive Garden the other day with my mother, and we were talking to her friends, and her friend paid for the meal, and she was like, I got it, like Kelly paid last time, and my father. And what happens is my mom was like, that's just his love language, like making people feel happy. And he's like, and my mom was like, oh, and physical touch and words of affirmation and my dad
and quality time, and
he just likes being loved. He just likes loving people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else do you guys want to talk about? Kind of your Mormon upbringing, both of you, Mason too, like as kids before teen years.
Before teen years. Yeah. Okay.
Anything else?
I like I don't know. I loved going to. Well, actually, okay, sometimes I wouldn't like going to church, actually. But for the most part, I like going to primary, and I love singing time. Because
you have favorite primary songs?
I really liked the harmony to, like, I'm a child of God, and I can't...
Do you want to sing it right now? Just kidding.
Oh,
girl. Also, Gifts of the Little Stream, that was a solid one. Let's see. And yeah, also sharing time wasn't my favorite. Unless we had this one lady in the ward. She would do it. Always make it fun.
Sister Dewey?
No, Griffith. Dewey was... singing time.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, but I liked going to church for the most part. But one part of it I hated was scouting, like Cub Scouts. The only reason I ever did it was because at a young age, my father promised all of us, if you get your Eagle Scout, you can have anything you want, anything you want. And I was like, I'm getting my Eagle Scout, bitches. Like, and so I didn't like scouting when I was younger at all. But I knew.
Why didn't you like it?
Like people forcing you to do things like that you don't want to do, and that's like something that comes a lot with like toxic masculinity. It's like just push through. And it's like, no, I don't like this.
Okay, what are the scouting things that weren't for you?
Camping. I hate camping.
Oh yeah.
Also, hiking. I hate hiking. I hate being dirty. Anything with like dirt, I'm like, no. Or like uncleanliness, or like that bro aspect. Like, girl, calm down. Like, chill your tits. Like, girl, I can't with that. But
So gay boys in scouting don't necessarily.
No. I mean,
Was it the same for you, Britton? Or
well,
not?
that's the thing. Not every gay. Like, it's interesting. Like certain things I did enjoy. Like I did enjoy scout camp, even though I don't appreciate necessarily camping and being cleanly. But I like beaches, but I don't like hikes. It's like I guess gay is not my personality. I mean, there's
wow, the shade.
No, I was not saying you. That is for you. But no, I don't mean it that way. But for me, there are things I enjoyed. But it also kind of goes back into being a kid, and you just did the things the church asked for, and it was expected. And not doing it, there were consequences to not doing it.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard because now I can see Dad's like, well, this is what we were told to do, and I want your success, and this is how I can see your long-term happiness. So therefore, it's better for me to force you to do this than it is to let you decide in that situation.
Yeah.
Like I remember with Quincy, it was
Which is who?
My older brother.
Okay.
And also my experience, but I share this because I saw this and I realized I could not say anything about scouting. Quincy did not like scouting, like more than all of us. Like
No, because he hated scouting.
10 times more. And I remember the first time I ever heard any of us siblings fight with my dad was my older brother and my dad about scouting. And I remember hearing that. I'm like, I can never fight about this. I have to be the good boy that goes and says yes to everything, because look what happened with Quincy. Like I never want to feel like even like secondhand trauma of that event. I'm like, I cannot feel that way. I can't be under that pressure, that flame. And so, yes, scouting was definitely not.
That's a big thing too, like secondhand trauma from like seeing your siblings getting in trouble and everything, like seeing things that happen to them with like mother and father and stuff like that. And it's like, I can never do that. And so they're like things when we're younger that like scar us, I guess. It's like, I can never do that. Like, what do you mean? It's so, you're totally right, Britton.
Yeah.
So, Britton, you were a little bit more into scouting than Mason.
Well, because, well, okay.
Because of force and trauma.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. Like, I made my personality the church. Like, I didn't have a personality. I didn't have a self. Like, I was whatever the church labeled or put on me. That was who I was.
I am Jesus.
Well, I mean, it also leads to that, but it's like, it's this, yeah, I'll talk about it more later too, but that's where I was
some
at.
heaviness behind that. Yeah, we'll get to. I mean, if I think about the founding of scouting, wasn't the founding of scouting to kind of prepare young men for the military? And so isn't scouting kind of like a toxic masculinity kind of like training for young boys? And then so for a lot of kids that just don't fit that mold, and maybe just for all boys in some ways, it can be unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that that's part of the Mormon experience, not just because of the toxic masculinity, but also because of the abuse that we now know was rampant within the Boy Scouts. It's so interesting that our leaders felt like that was an inextricable part of an upbringing,
That's
right?
a good point.
Yeah.
Don't you just love the military, Britton? It's your favorite thing.
Oh my gosh.
I love the military.
Well, no, like just to show you, like I'll talk more about it later. But one of the like where I was at, like with the church, and I thought I'm gonna be a dentist. I'm gonna go into the military to be a dentist, because that's what you do. Like that's how you're successful. That's how I'll finally have self-worth. And so it's very very much so. Yeah, I'll talk more about it later.
Okay.
But church.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to talk about kind of your preteen years? Either of you, like what happened to you individually, what happened in your family, anything before we jump into the teen years?
I do. Something that was very formative for me too. And it's interesting because I mention it because it's not so much a church thing. And I see its play in who I became, or like where I was at with the church. My older brother, he had 2 kidney transplants. Well, he had a kidney transplant when he was 12 and I was like 10. And that was, for me, like being a kid, I was still in oblivious Britton mode, but I wasn't so oblivious to the fact that I'm like, I need to be the people pleaser in this family. Like right now, shit's going, shit's going down with my older brother, and I
could have died.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, and I could see the stress that both my parents were in, of like the worry and the fear. And I'm like, I can't be a problem child. I have to be good Britton to be able to make their lives easier, because that's going down right now. And that's not the blame for anything, because that's just life and what happened and being a kid. But that is something that did play a lot into who I became and some of my trauma and things I'm working through.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that the combination of kind of the boxes that your Mormon military upbringing kind of needed you to be in, plus this trauma with your brother, maybe this Britton land was just kind of your way of escaping,
yeah,
and your way of coping with not being able to kind of get to know yourself and be who you maybe wanted or needed to be.
Yeah.
You were always having to play this external role. So you had this bifurcation between your internal life, oblivious, and then the external life where you probably didn't have a lot of self-knowledge.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that probably wasn't super healthy.
No. Oh, absolutely not. No.
What'd you say, Mason?
I said, "Are you like a therapist?"
So we forget. But absolutely not. It was not healthy, and it led to a lot of long-term consequences that I'm still dealing with today. So
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I mean that's humanity. We all have shit that happens to us, and it's like learning to deal with it and to be able to enjoy life. So
it was kind of nice though, because growing up, I always saw Britton. Britton was the perfect. He was the perfect child. He was the one who
perfect in terms of
he
church
went and swept the floor, and he did the dishes, and he read the Book of Fun fact, I've actually never read the Book of Mormon. But anyways,
Are you proud of that or ashamed of that?
I'm kind of proud of it now. But like always seeing Britton, he was the perfect child, and I always watched him growing up. I was like, girl, I ain't gonna ever be like that. Like, not in the fact like I don't want to, it's that I could never be up to his level of being that. And so for me, it was like, well, I better just be my own person. Like, I better be myself. And so Britton took a lot of the bullets for all of us.
And your person, this is a family system dynamic. Your personality becomes shaped by not wanting to be Britton.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of, that pushes you in a different direction.
My own individual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be your own
Sibling
individual.
order psychology right here.
Ooh.
On display.
Let's go middle child.
I mean, that's part of what this interview is about. I think a lot of mental health, is tied up in this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting a sense for how the family's developing. Sounds complex.
Yeah.
Sounds intense.
Yeah. I'd always joke, jokingly, I didn't actually. I say I would joke, but there's part of me that actually felt it. I'm like, oh well, Quincy's the oldest, Mason's the youngest, the baby of the family. Ashley is technically a middle child, but she's a girl, the only girl in the family. And I'm like, and then there's Britton, and so I would joke about that, but I think there's part of me who's like, well, crap, like, there
What am I?
Who is Britton? Yeah, so
Okay. Talking really quickly about like Heavenly Father, Jesus, and your prayer and spiritual life as kids before your teens. Anything worth mentioning there?
yeah, I mean, I prayed every night. I remember, because I thought I felt good when we sang primary songs. Like I loved I'm trying to be like Jesus and those things, and it was fun reading the Book of Mormon, picture books, the comics version. I mean,
Those are fire.
It's probably awesome too because it was a bunch of men that were shirtless. But
Oh yes.
but it was, and so for me,
And Nephi's kind of hot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nephi.
Flame and Limerel tying him up. Oh, my. Sorry.
Sorry, viewers.
I'm
You're
even having
making
some
Kara laugh.
repressed memories
Kara's
coming
blushing.
back.
Kara is officially blushing.
John loves it when I blush, and I'm like, oh, I do remember that 10-year-old Kara going, boy,
Oh my gosh.
Kara's vibing with you right now.
yeah.
But yeah, I was that kid who was loud and singing and all like singing at the top of my lungs, all the primary songs, prayer and scripture study. Like I'd read the Book of Mormon, like sometimes I'd read just a picture book. But yeah, I was very much so in the church and found peace, and I didn't think even twice about anything at pretty much at that kind of point in my life.
I wasn't.
Really?
Yeah,
You went into it as much?
No, I remember I've never read the Book of Mormon. So one time my mom was like, "Are you reading your scriptures?" I was maybe 7 or 8. And I was like, "What? Like, is this like a requirement, girl? Like, what?" And so it happens, and she's like, "Oh, you should probably what?
No, you go.
Oh, you should probably be reading your scriptures, Mason." And so she gets out the picture book. I'm like, "Okay." And so like I read 2 pages and like, this is nice. And it was never like it for me. It was never like, Mason, you have to read the Book of Mormon and you have to like be the perfect Mormon to. I never knew the consequences until like later. And so as a child, I didn't pray. And then sometimes mom would usually say every night, make sure you say your prayers and like leave the bedroom and everything. And so I'd lay down and be like, oh crap. And I'd like flip over and be like, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. But besides that, I was never, never that person.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because for Quincy and I, we cycled through a bunch of different things to like try to incentivize
So many.
like chores, exercise, and other things like that, and in scriptures. And so we had like payments one time. Like we've had times where like privileges taken away. Like and so there's very much it was a choice, but if we didn't choose, there were consequences.
Damn. I never had that.
So I mean that's just the blessing of not blessing curse of being a younger child because
Yeah.
as parents go on, they're like, we're tired.
Yeah. Or being strict turns out often doesn't work or backfires.
They're like,
and
crap.
parents just like, I need to chill the F
Joke's
out.
on you. In a reverse
My
card.
kid. Yeah. Okay. So the research that I did for my dissertation, a lot of LGBT Mormon youth kind of didn't start feeling super different just in terms of attraction or gender or sexual identity until kind of puberty. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't always the case. Sometimes it getting a sense of feeling different would happen around age 8 or 9. How was it for you guys in terms of gender identity or sexual identity prior to puberty?
Do you want to go first?
John's like, when did you guys feel a little fruity? No, you can go first.
Yeah, Britton first, yeah.
I remember very distinctly, we were at Hanauma Bay, so I was like 8 or 9.
Hanauma Bay.
I know. It's this beautiful beach in Hawaii because we lived in Oahu for 3 years because Pearl Harbor is right there and that's where Dad worked. We were on Hawaii. I was down in Hanauma Bay, and and it's this gorgeous like cliffs like that protect this deep down beach. It's amazing. Anywho, we're walking there, and Dad kind of looks over at me. He's like, "You would tell me if you're attracted to guys, right?" And at that very moment, it never even crossed my mind. But I like looked over at a shirtless guy. I'm like, I would tell you. And then I'm like, but also in my head, I'm like, he looks pretty nice. But I'm like, I don't know. I just was clueless to my sexuality at the point. So it's funny because that's like a marking. Like I knew. I'm like, oh well, maybe I do know something. And Dad had asked about it. And then another big thing was
He had asked about it. What do you mean?
He had asked like if I was gay, like, or if I would tell him if I was gay, and I said yes.
At what age?
I was 8, 9, 8 or 9.
He's asking you that at 8 or 9?
Yeah, I think so. It was. It wasn't so much like are you? It was more you would tell me if you felt that way, right? Like a trust sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's kind of young.
Yeah, I know. So I do remember like distinctly being so jealous of Mason when back in Hawaii, like 8 or 9 still. And Ashley had this bell dress, and it was the most beautiful satin yellow I've ever seen in my life.
Ever.
And when she twirled in it, like the skirt went out.
You look like a cupcake, bitch.
Sorry. And so sorry, child. I'm sorry. But it was gorgeous, and I remember it was okay for Mason to spit in it.
I love myself.
Mason got a spit in it. But when I went to ask if I could spin it, and my dad's like, dad or mom, I can't remember who, it was like, no, boys don't, like, you're too old for that. I'm like, well, fuck this shit. I mean, I want to spin in the yellow dress. Like, and so I do remember that, and like I can look back now, but I didn't ever admit anything like that at that age. To kind of jump ahead, like I didn't even admit I was gay to myself until I was 17. Like, even though I had all those feelings, that's when I finally like stopped and realized I'm attracted to men, and like told myself. But
You started to have inklings as young as
8 or 9. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Because sometimes people want to blame it on all sorts of different things, or say that it's stuff that happens in your teen
Like a
years
trauma.
or whatever.
No.
But for you were knowing by 8 or 9.
Yeah. Definitely.
And had you been taught anything about? Would you even known what gay was?
No, I had no idea.
Okay, so you would have
honestly.
never even heard of it.
No.
So this was just occurring to you.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is something I enjoy. Because when you're a kid, you don't have these labels to put on yourself. You just like, this is what I like, and I like it, and there's nothing wrong with it until someone says you shouldn't do that, and then you're like, crap. Well,
dang it.
yeah, what am I doing wrong? So,
All right, how about you, Mason?
Okay, like looking back on it now, I was like, I see the limp wrist girl. Like, but as a child, I loved playing with Barbies, like the feminine things, and like I loved playing with Barbies, and I loved doing dress up with Ashley, like my sister Ashley, and I loved when she put her makeup on me and everything. And I remember looking back on it now, I didn't even realize it, but whenever I was at Walmart and I had to go to the bathroom, I'd walk through the men's underwear section just to take a peek, and so. Like looking back and I was like, oh yeah, but like back then I was like, I never knew. I never had any inkling.
like admitting to yourself.
Admitting to, and I didn't even know what. I remember when we were younger, we used to call being gay purple.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because purple was like a boy and a girl color. I don't even know why.
I didn't know where it came from.
Me either, but like still, I didn't even know what it was until someone like, I think I was watching Ellen DeGeneres. Because I love Finding Nemo, and like Ellen DeGeneres was finding Dory. Like she was Dory. Not Finding Dory. But I remember Mom walked past one time. She was like, you know, she's a lesbian, right? I'm like, what? Like
who's that?
Who's a lesbian? No, and she's like, she likes women. I'm like, okay. Like I was like, okay, like cool. And then Mom's like, okay, and like goes away. I'm like,
check that parenting box.
So like in that moment, I was like, oh, like now, and like I knew what it was, and then I like obviously like learned more as I got older, but I never knew, I guess.
Or admit it to yourself, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even admit it to myself because, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, like when I got to like 14, maybe, but.
Did you guys notice things about each other as kids? In that way?
Oh, I mean, like just I can look back now, and like in hindsight's 20/20. I can look and see like, oh, well, there's all these like these mannerisms and things that are not necessary, because that's the thing. Just because you're attracted to men doesn't mean you act a certain way. Doesn't mean that all gay people are like have those mannerisms. But there are certain things that are part of Mason's personality. And I'm like, oh well, that's kind of cool. I mean, kind of makes sense. So I can look back now, but in the process, no. Well. Until I came out to you, like that year before, I had inklings, but I'm like, no.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. I didn't know. I just didn't know anything.
Something that I'm still trying to really solidify in my mind, and something that I think a lot of our listeners are still probably not clear about, is just the real difference between gender identity and sexual attraction. They're totally different axes. Whether you're more typically masculine or typically feminine or anywhere in between, or different areas of the spectrum based on different behaviors or presentation, like that's its own spectrum.
Yep.
And you can be, I mean, in theory, you can be assigned male at birth, have more characteristically feminine traits, but still be attracted to women. Like there's any sort of combination there, but gender is its own axis, and then sexual attraction is its own axis. And so, even when you're talking about like being interested in playing with Barbies, that's a gender sort of attribute that's sometimes assigned to the female gender, but it has nothing to do with sexuality, especially because you're a kid at the time. But we're just so awful at really separating and understanding of gender identity versus sexual identity. People just don't. People just still can't get that through their heads. And we all, I promise you, listen to me, over the next 5 or 10 years, gender is becoming and will continue to become a major issue for you, for your children, for your grandchildren. We all need to get really clear. We've kind of had a bit of a sexual, LGBT revolution, LGB revolution. The gender revolution is here, and it's coming even more. And we really need to get clear about the differences between those two, because they're not the same, and we intermingle them and confuse them all the time.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying like.
No, I didn't. That wasn't corrective.
Okay.
That wasn't corrective.
I just want to say just because I play with Barbies doesn't mean like straight men can play with Barbies too. I'm not judging anything, but I'm just saying.
I think that's a power of for me, one of my benefits of leaving the church is being able to have an open mind and like actually learn and accept those things, and to realize that it's okay to like sometimes mess things up and not get it right. And like, oops, I'm sorry, I'm growing. Thanks for being patient with me while I'm learning. But it's so powerful to be able to learn more and to be able to get there.
Yeah, I didn't mention that to be corrective, only so that even in this interview, we can just be thinking about those as separate things.
Yeah.
Because they are different. Okay, anything else? Should we start kind of with your kind of
also?
Go ahead, Mason.
Can I just say one thing? Like, I don't know, like whoever's listening to this out there, but like I just want to say like being gay, being lesbian, being trans, like anything like LGBTQ plus, like it's not a choice. Like it ain't no choice. Like I'm not choosing to be this way or anything. And maybe if it was a choice, I would choose to be this way. No, but
because you're pretty fabulous.
Yeah, I am. But it's not a choice. But
well, let's just dive right in because one of the most awful, odious stereotypes or perceptions, especially within Mormonism, but within most conservative religious traditions, is people's erroneous theories about why people are gay.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether it's because they were abused, whether it's because, and this is stuff the Mormon church still teaches gay people today, that they had a, quote, distant father and an overbearing mother, right? Or they didn't have the right relationships with young men, enough, wood chopping and camping and, athletic behaviors. And you've probably heard a million of these. You guys are both saying that at age 8 or 9, you're feeling this stuff. And, do you guys have anything you want to say about that?
I know plenty of like gay people like my age or older than me who have like an amazing like relationship with their father. Like they did everything with their dad, like, and they played sports with their father and everything. And well, all the, traditionally masculine things.
Look at the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and even then they were gay. So it was never, I hate.
It boils my blood.
Yeah, it does. It like makes me angry because it also like gives me a sense of like that someone else had a role like in,
It's
In
like,
what, say it.
like someone else has a role in who I am. And obviously people like play parts in it. Like it's as if, I don't know.
third party.
Yeah, a third party is like in
determining your
control of me.
identity.
Exactly.
And then there's the idea that it's a choice.
Yes.
What about that?
Girl, I can't.
I guess an interesting question I had. Someone had kind of brought up the other day is like, I'd like to ask every straight person, it's like, well, when did you know you were straight? Like, how do you know you're straight? And like, how do you know you're attracted to the opposite gender? And it's this question of, I didn't choose this. And then especially the biggest thing is, do you think I would go through what I've gone through just and choose this?
Meaning what? Oh, yeah, because we're about to talk about what happens.
I'm sorry. No, I would not.
Not that it's not fabulous, but
but
society makes it so hard.
No, especially
Exactly.
the church.
Like
Sorry.
you really think I'm doing that? Like another misconception is like I'm doing this for attention. Bitch, I love attention, but I'm not doing it. Like I'm not going through all this crap just to be like, look at me.
And like straight men don't like attention, right? Like straight women, like.
I can't.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways.
My opinions.
Yeah, and I'll just add from a scientific standpoint, there's literally zero evidence that abuse, parenting strategies, birth order, in terms of the social dynamics of birth order, have anything to do with this. And there's no scientific evidence that it's a choice for almost everyone. This is something that happens either genetically and or in the womb with the hormonal, the brain development in the womb. That's kind of when gender and sexual identity is largely formed. And there's no evidence that parenting styles, abuse, or any of those things matters. That's something that's actually quite conclusive scientifically. And birth order can influence it. Mm-hmm. They found that the more children somebody has, the more likely that sons down in the birth order are likely to be gay. But even then, it's not as clear cut. But anyway,
that evidence really helped me, by the way.
What's that?
About 2 years ago, when my husband started listening to this podcast, actually, and I was a TBM Mormon, not TBM, but I was still in the church. Yeah. And my husband and I were renovating a house. He's listening to podcasts all day. Oh, Aaron, what are you listening to? What's it about? And he's like, there's some really good evidence to show that the reasons why people are gay. And it was stuff I just had never heard before, and things about birth order, and just listening to the science on it. And because when you're raised in the gospel, I guess you kind of just fall back on like, this is a trial from God that needs to be overcome, And so I just encourage anyone who's listening to this and they're a little bit hesitant to go from the trial from God type of idea around like, same-sex attraction, to really lead with empathy and lead with what the science is saying, and away from what the religious zealots in Salt Lake City, Utah have been saying for a while. So that really got me around. And that was literally just 2 years ago that I had to have an eye-opening experience. And thanks to my husband for that.
Yeah. And the idea that it's a choice, we surveyed over 1,000 Mormons, LGBTQ Mormons, who tried to change their sexual orientation, and literally 0% were able to change it. Yeah. So if 0% were able to change their sexual orientation, it's clearly not a choice. No. That's out of 1,000, right?
Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
Like the idea that like, this is just my trial in life. This is what's happening to me. And once I go to heaven, I'll be straight. I understand thinking like that. But when you're in your own shoes, I guess, like in my own experience, like it almost feels kind of like crappy, like to think that like an integral part of who you are, like that you do not choose, is going to be changed later just because it's a sin now and it's a trial that you have, and it's like it hurts. It's hurtful. Like
totally.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that too.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, so let's just talk, Britton. Let's talk about your kind of adolescence, and how the fun, and I'm saying that in a dark way. This is where things get serious, right?
No, yeah. So, I'm sorry.
You can hold your notes. It does not matter if you hold your notes or look at them.
I just they're like a comfort blanket. I mean, I had a lot of those when I was a kid. So
we celebrate notes.
So, kind of just to start, it's like, so here I am in this family. With the church, and like I've already said, like with how the church has set up our family, and it's very much so. There's one way or the highway, and so and also as a kid, I'm like, I need to do what's right. And so I'm now going to teenage years. This is kind of when I finally I kind of went out of Britton land. I started in 8th grade, and I remember there's this one boy. Oh, bless him if he's watching this. he was at the time I didn't realize I was attracted to him, but I wanted to sit by him. I wanted to like have him over, invite him, all those things.
You want to be their BFF.
I know. I'm like, I wanted to be their best friend, and healthy. I'm like, I want only their attention on me.
Yeah.
Anywho, I remember feeling all those things and just feeling like frustrated about that. And I remember people asking me like, "Are you gay?" I'm like, "Of course I'm not gay. Like, what are you thinking about?"
I'm not gay.
no, but very much. It's dark in the fact that everything, like all of a sudden about me, like I had to conform everything, my body, my thoughts, my mannerisms, how I speak, the tone, like how high my voice went. It had to be controlled because I was scared of being seen that way. Even though I didn't realize it in myself, I'm like, no, I'm good, because gay to me, it meant bad. Gay to me meant.
Had you been taught things in the church about being gay by this point?
Yes. And that, I had, in the fact that that was a sin. It was a sin to have homosexual relationships. And then also and I can't remember how I heard it. I think maybe through jokes that my aunts and uncles have made, or my dad or my mom, or like, and then purple, like Mason talked about that. Like we had a nickname for it. And so even amongst us kids, like that,
like saying gay was bad.
Yeah. Even like saying the word, like, oh, like it means happy. And like you would giggle because like it was a naughty word. And it was on par with like, fuck, shit, and damn. Sorry, all my listeners, but like it was on par with all those words, and so I had already internalized that. And then I take after my father in the fact that I'm very perfectionistic, and I wanted love. I wanted to feel loved and enough, and especially with the situation at home and with how church works, like the way I can get noticed, the way I can get loved, was through being good, like through serving, through getting things done, through making sure I was always in line and never had to like bother anyone. I was never in anyone's way. And so being righteous, exactly. And like reading my scriptures. And so I got through God, and then it also, and it's a multi-factor thing that I'm still working through, but it wasn't just like with mannerisms and speaking and other things. It was also with physical stuff, because no fault of my dad, like physical fitness was very important to my father because of our family and some of the health problems we've had.
He is a fit specimen.
Yes, he very much so is.
As ex-Mormon Reddit will show.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that I, because of just how things growing up and some of the roles of like being required to run, like either to run or do a sport, it led to me, like, I hated my body. Like, and sorry. And I'm still getting through that.
Tissues are below.
Thank you. Like my body was evil. And then you get into church, and I finally started to become aware of these feelings I'm having. And what are we taught? We're taught that the natural man is an enemy to God and has been since the fall of Adam, and will be forever and ever unless he yields the enticings of the Holy Spirits and putteth off the natural man within and becometh a child. Sorry, I can go on.
No, that's good.
It's like you're drilled that into you. And so I was taught that my body was evil. Like any feeling I had, any pleasure, any like food, if I ever ate something that was pleasurable, I couldn't eat food that made me happy. I couldn't do anything that brought pleasure, because I, like, to my core, was evil and gross and terrible. And the only way I could feel enough good was through doing the things that the church says. Like it's like you mentioned earlier with my parents, it's that cycle that they give you where it's, you are broken. The fall of Adam made you an evil person. The only way you can be saved is a third party, that you have to go to him and repent. And great, you've repented, but you screw up one more time, and all those other sins, they fall right back on top of you. And so it's just this vicious cycle of guilt. I remember, sorry, I'm very passionate about this. I remember...
Take all the time you want.
Thank you. I remember kneeling, and I also have OCD tendencies.
Scrupulosity.
Yeah. And so I remember praying, like having 40-minute, hour-long prayers where I was so scared that if I didn't pray for something, or if I forgot one thing, bad thing would happen. I had to make sure I always had it. And it became this, like, it became my identity. Like that's who I was. I was happy because I was enough, because I was the Mormon boy who stood up for Christ in schools. I was the person that said, like, that would be there for everyone to, sorry, in the church, sorry. Sorry, you okay?
That's so sad.
Sorry.
What are you feeling, Mason?
You make me cry, damn it.
Like, I look at myself, I'm like, Mason, you're such a mess. Like, what did you go through as a child? And I hear Britton's story, like, God damn, like, girl, what do you have to cry about? Like, no. Like, obviously all of our experiences are our own, but... Like,
you're very sweet. Thanks.
Continue.
Thanks. But yeah, I gave up myself, and I was proud of it, and I was happy. I was happiest when I looked skinny. I was happiest when I was.
So it's eating disordered behavior,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that too. I was happiest when I had ran 3-4 miles. I was happiest when I had made sure to remember to pray, and then I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to be able to read my scriptures for half an hour and shower and get ready and everything to get to seminary on time at 6 o'clock. And I remember having this like mental and emotional distress. Like I couldn't be late. I had to toe every line, and it didn't just stop at church things. It went to school too. It was very much so like I had to be perfect. I had to have the grades. I had to make sure all my teachers liked me. I had to make sure other people liked me too, because whatever they thought of me, that was what I was. So sorry, like looking back on that, I'm like, poor sad little Britton. And so that's kind of where I was. And then if it's okay, I don't want to take up too much time, but and throughout all of that too, I like the sexual piece, which is very important because of how the church treats it. And that was also very much a big part of my shame, my self-hatred. Because I remember starting around 9, 10, I would have like dreams, and I would do, actually even younger. I remember being like 6 or 7, like doing things to pleasure myself, and never like reaching, because at that age you don't reach an orgasm. But like I remember doing that thing and thinking nothing of it because no one ever told me wrong, except one time where I remember being told, like, because I was younger, like that's not what you do. You don't touch yourself there. And so I'm like, oh, and I kind of put it off because I have a tiny bit of my mom in that way, which I love. She can just like, whatever, like whatever. We don't need that in our lives. But I put that off until I remember like the first time, like, sorry to be graphic, but the first time I had an orgasm, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've done something wrong. Like that was like, I shouldn't feel that strongly about anything, the pleasure aspect of it. And so it became a cycle of absolute guilt around my body. Like I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror. I wouldn't look down at myself. I wouldn't touch myself. And then I'd go through these cycles of like where I would do things and immediately feel like this overcoming guilt of where I was hellish, I was evil, there's no hope for me, I'd have to repent. And then also this absolute fear, because I have had and still have in some senses a fear of authority figures, and this idea of like, I don't want to, like, do I have to go to the bishop? Do I have to go explain to him, or that, I was about to say him or her, I'm like, wait, no, that's not how the church works. Like, do I have to go explain to him like that I went and like self-pleasured? Like, is that sin next to killing? And so I was there, and thankfully, something I will mention, my dad, I didn't know this, but my dad had talked to every bishop we'd been to and told him, you're not to ask my children about masturbation. You're not allowed to do that. And they all, I like applaud him for that, because I never had even heard about that word until I think my mom was the first time I heard someone say it. And it was funny. I actually remember where we were. It's like this curve on Washington. She kind of like, yeah, that thing. And like, went away from the subject. It was the best. Anywho, but none of my bishops asked about it. But I remember feeling that guilt, like, should I not? And then also feeling very much so like I need to, I'll get personal revelation about it. So I'll pray about it. And through personal revelation, I would feel that it's fine. I was told by God, whatever that means, through the Spirit, that I'm okay doing it, and I feel okay, and I do it. And then there'd be a lesson in church. There'd be someone would say something. There'd be a leader, and so it's immediately back into the guilt cycle. Maybe I felt that wrong. Maybe I'm wrong for feeling that. And then I'd read about it in like Fourth Strength of Youth. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm evil. And then like the things I would think about too, because like, even though what I would think about is very much men, like I didn't put 2 and 2 together in that sense, because I'm like, I'm not gay. I can't be. Like, that's not that's not an option. And so that's kind of the cycle of where I was in high school. If you were to look back at high school Britton, he was a sad, hurt little boy that he woke up, went to read his scriptures, showered, went to seminary, like sat there in seminary paying attention. Like he went and talked to other people during seminary, would play piano for seminary when he had to, go to school, and just go through every single like motion to like get exactly the perfect score and everything I could, and then come home, run, and work for 6 hours on homework depending on the day, because I was in AP classes, and like I have to do the best for that. And I think I took up 12 or 13 AP classes over the course of my high school years.
I'll never see him.
No, my family didn't, like, especially that first year, like they didn't see me, because the OCD tendencies would go into how I read, how I studied. I'd have to reread passages over and over again because I was so damn worried about missing a single point on a reading quiz the next day that was like worth 5 points. And so it was this cycle of self-hatred, not even self-hatred. Like I just didn't, I couldn't be me. And so I had to destroy everything that was a resemblance of who Britton was. So that's kind of where it was.
And that's just as a little mental health injection. So scrupulosity is religious obsessive compulsive disorder. It's actually what I studied for my master's degree. We've done several Mormon Stories podcast episodes about it. I actually heard Terrell and Fiona Givens talking about scrupulosity just like in the past few months. So the church is starting to catch on about this because it turns out it's rampant in the Mormon missionary field.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But what's super pernicious about scrupulosity, especially in a Mormon context, is that you said you were a sad little boy, yet as you rifled off all the activities you were engaged in, that's like every parent's dream and every bishop's dream. So you're hyper performing, you're reinforced as the model child, your parents are over the moon excited, and yet inside you're feeling what?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like either that or terrible guilt. And it's
so it's not great. It's not great for you.
No, not at all. So
even though you're living the dream.
Yeah. And then that adds another layer of guilt. You're like, I'm doing everything. What am I doing wrong? There's something wrong with me. Like my core must be broken. Like I must be broken because this isn't working like it should. And yeah, that's kind of where it was before. And
so if you don't have, quote, the spirit because you feel bad, then you think.
Yeah, I think that I'm evil. I'm not worthy of the spirit. I'm not. And that's the biggest attack to anyone's psyche, worthiness. Like, who is anyone to tell me if I'm worthy or enough? Because no one is. I am enough, period. No qualifiers. Yeah. But I'm there now. But then I'm like, I'm nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so, and then also with the gay stuff, like my dad, the gay stuff, my dad, sorry to switch topics if that's okay, but my dad is very much so like he said, high libido. He's like, oh, so all my kids are going to be like that. And well, he's not all, I don't know all the rest of them, but he's right. But he's very much so.
You're your father's son, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am. And so he's sitting there asking like, who do you like? Like, which girl do you like? And I remember, even as a kid, I'm like, well, crap, I got to pick someone. And so I would we'd ask like, who's your favorite celebrity? I'm like, Drew Barrymore. She's real attractive.
Drew Barrymore.
She's just
sexy lady.
she's the picture of
Emma Watson. Oh.
And so I had to pick someone. I'm like, because I have to pass as straight. And I remember I had this great friend. I love her to pieces, Natalie Hawes. She is amazing. Anywho, I decided, I'm like, well, she's the girl I'm gonna like. And so we, in a sense, like, thankfully it worked out that she's not so much like she wanted physical stuff. Like, she was more like, she's very much so in the church, which is awesome. And she's very much so about emotional connection, which I love about her. We get along because we enjoy the same things, like Jane Austen and all that fun stuff. But she was the girl I dated, and Dad was very happy and wanted to support that. And so I remember my senior year.
I forgot about this.
For my senior trip, he's like, you know what? For my birthday, they put a little sideshow. Like, I have a surprise for you, and they surprised me with a trip to New York. And like, guess what? You can take Natalie. I'm like, crap. I'm like, okay, like this is gonna be great. And so I remember, it's so sad because New York is amazing and beautiful, and going there and just feeling like. Just like out of it, just like out of body, essentially. Like I wasn't there because I was constantly stressed about my dad, who very loving, like wanting us to hold hands, wanting us to kiss. I'm like, that's not what I want to do, but I'm like, I'll do these things. And so it was just very much, I was in my own head. And I share that story to share how we, like, when you're trying to do what's right, you can do everything. You can date girls. And I bring this up also in the fact that when people are they talk to you, they say, oh, well, it's a choice, isn't it? I'm like, honey boo, I tried. Like, I did everything.
I tried real hard, girl.
Yeah, like, it's not like I was not trying to be straight and be with a girl. So that's where I was pre-mission.
Yeah, well, people, I kind of want to have to connect the dots for a straight folk, but like, imagine so for you straight men out there, Imagine some alternative universe where you're a teenage boy with all these hormones for girls, but society is making you like men. as a teenage boy, and making you walk around and hold hands with the man, or maybe kiss a man, or date a man, because that's what society expects of you. That's the same thing that our gay youth and lesbian youth have to deal with. Imagine the aversion that many of you might feel being forced to live that way, and then imagine what that would feel like. And that's kind of what you were trying your best to do, but
deal with, yeah.
Not super fun.
No, no, really not.
Like I could get kidnapped and have to be in like some kind of torture chamber and hold hands with a woman, we'll say, or whatever. And I would hate it on day 1 and I'd hate it on day 45,000, you know?
Literally.
Like it's not something that I would be able to change. And I think putting it in those terms is helpful, but yeah.
So awesome. Thanks. So there was kind of sad, graduated, didn't really have a high school experience, which I mean, whatever. I'm not going to like more than that because I mean, the past is the past. I can't change it. But so there was.
So by high school graduation, had you come out to yourself?
Oh yes, sorry, I should get to that.
Come out to anyone?
No. I finally come out to myself at 17. So I was like my 11th grade year, and 11th grade, beginning of 12th grade. I'm like, I'm gay.
Did you try kissing? You tried kissing?
Oh, I tried kissing on the cheek, of course, because she was very much so. I only wanted it on the cheek. I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's more than I wanted. So, but
then it
you're
didn't
right.
do it for you.
No, I didn't. And I remember. So that experience is kind of important. Like when I finally like admitted it to myself, I'm like, my first thought was like, well, crap, what am I gonna do with the church? Like, because that's my worth. That's who I am. I'm like, I need to figure out like, what does the church teach about being gay? Like, let me go into it. And so at the time, I think the church had the website. They've changed it now, Mormon and Gay. And so I remember watching those videos and seeing all that stuff. And I'm like, this is, I guess, look, they did it. So therefore, I must be able to do it because, and yeah.
What do you mean by did what? Like,
oh, well, for example, I also watched, I think I can't remember the name. It's like Star something.
North Star. And there's also Voices of Hope.
Yeah.
By Ty Mansfield.
Of mixed orientation marriages. Of like, well, they married a woman. Like he married a woman and they had a child together and they're okay and they're in church. And so therefore I must be able to, or some of the other stories of like
Mormon story. No, not. Wait, what are they called? There's like
Mormonads.
I don't know. There was like a YouTube channel where it would do that. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, I'll just say for those who have no idea what we're talking about, the Mormon Church and most high demand Orthodox religions are in this conundrum of interpreting the Quran or the Bible or the Old Testament as saying that it's evil, it's sinful to be gay, but 5 to 10% of their members are. And so they've got to figure out what to tell people. The Mormon Church for many, many years has a history of, well, if you go back 10 or 20, 30 years, that it's evil, that it's wicked, that it's perverted, that it's nasty, that it's terrible, even have the thoughts or the feelings. And so you've got these decades long experiences of, electroshock therapy or conversion therapy or reparative therapy where people were put through mental, psychological torture to try and ungay them, and it had all sorts of disastrous consequences. And to be honest, this is still happening, so I don't want to talk about it like it's totally in the past. Oh, yeah. But at some point, when we beat the church over the head with the inhumanity and when of these techniques, and when conversion and reparative therapy started falling out of fashion in the broader United States, and lawsuits started to happen where churches and organizations were being sued for this unethical, inhumane practice that was backed by religions. Mm-hmm. Curtin and McConkie, I'm sure, told the church where you need to change your tone and back off. But you would still get, 10, 15 years ago, people like Ty Mansfield, people like North Star, Evergreen, the Mormon Church putting out these videos either, because there's only 3 options as a gay Mormon still to this day. You either marry a woman and marry someone you're not attracted to, 2, be celibate for the rest of your life, or leave the church and get excommunicated and find the love of your life. And so so what the church had to do was sort of sell celibacy or mixed orientation marriages to its youth to let them know this is the path for you. And so you get people like Ty Mansfield or North Star or the Mormons and Gays website that would handpick these gay or lesbian Mormons who are adults and have them sell celibacy or sell mixed orientation marriages as like, hey, it's not so bad. We're doing it. You can do it too. And, of course, a lot of them were lying. And since then, a lot of those marriages or lifestyles have failed. And of course, the church is never going to tell anyone that after those lives end in disastrous consequences. But there's always this new generations and cycles of new spokespeople, whether it's Dave Matheson or Dean Bird or Ty Mansfield or Josh and Lolly Weed or whoever. The church is always going to rinse and repeat, recycle these public role models to say, you can do it. You can go your whole life and never have any sexual intimacy and you'll be fine. It's just like alcoholism or diabetes. It's just your cross in life that you can endure if you hold close to Jesus. And that's what the Voices of Hope project was. Ty Mansfield's Voices of Hope book. That's what the Voices of Hope website was about and all these videos. And that's what the Mormon Gays website was about. Yep. Or you can marry a woman and you may be repulsed by her and she may never feel loved and wanted, but it's okay. It's just a short, brief mortal experience. And then you'll be fixed in the afterlife and you can be happy then, which of course leads so many Mormon LGBT people to think maybe I should just speed up the process and die to then get fixed and have a joyous life. So these are the types of videos that the church has sold, and continues to sell and market to vulnerable youth like Britton and Mason. I'm sorry to just hijack the conversation, but especially for our non-Mormon listeners, I just want to give everyone kind of the background. Did I get that right or wrong?
That's spot on.
Yeah,
okay.
It was Mormon messages. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But definitely spot on. You brought that up, and I had that moment of realization. I'm like, where do I fit in this plan of salvation? And
those options that the church put forward for you
were exactly that. I'm like, marry, celibacy, and Mason.
Marry a woman, which for you,
there are 4 options.
Well, yeah, which I'm like, I could do that. I mean, that's what I'm with Natalie right now. I mean, maybe after I get back from my mission, Natalie we could because it was working and because I mean, I didn't know. I never kissed a guy. I didn't know what it was like. I had never even imagined. I wouldn't even. That's the thing. I wouldn't even let myself imagine So it was interesting. Going back to my masturbation because we all want to talk about that. But in what it was interesting. What I allowed the way I morally allowed myself to do it was I wasn't allowed to think about men. Or I wasn't allowed to think about touching anyone. Every time they would get close, I'd have a barrier in between me and the person, like a glass barrier I'd put up immediately, or I'd just immediately stop and then go into guilt. So I didn't even know or think about what it'd be like to kiss someone or any of those things. So for me, I'm like, you know what? I never even thought about that. I'm like, I guess I'm already living this life. I mean, just keep on going with Natalie. And so you have the option that or celibacy and then leave the church. And Mason brings up a 4th option, which you mentioned it too, which is suicide. It's that's another option, which I hadn't considered at the time.
At the time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because so many people think, well, you're gay, so just leave your religion. But it's not that simple,
it's not,
right?
Because you go.
Your religion is all of your thoughts, all of your facts, all your opinion, everything you think in your mind is, even though you think you yourself, it's not. It's like the Matrix, but you're in a church. You're being
parents,
controlled.
Your grandparents, your community.
Everything is centered around this. And it's so you can't leave that. You can't leave your whole life behind. And so, yeah.
It doesn't wash off your beliefs. Your brain has been carefully all those years of seminary, of Sunday school, of priesthood, of family home evening, of scripture study. Your brain is wired to be a believing Mormon.
Exactly.
It's not just I'm gay. Okay, I don't believe anymore. No.
It's a funny thing. Recently, what happened was now that I'm out of the church, I used to work at Home Goods and I would clean the bathrooms and they had this certain spray there and to clean the bathrooms and I sprayed it. I was like, it smells like the church after it's been cleaned on Sunday. And it was so comforting to me. And I was like, wait, Mason, what are you doing? Stop. You can't think like that. It was so even now, things like that, they're so comforting because it brings you back to a time in life. Well, for me at least, where there weren't any problems. You just went to church and you came home and it's
confusing, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So So that's kind of where I was at with Natalie, and
You had
then
those 4 options.
yeah,
in your mind.
those options, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna be able to get through it, and also kind of how missions are set up. We're kind of taught that missions fix you, that they can
Had
make
you been taught that?
well, I mean, I essentially that when you go on your mission, you come back more prepared and more spiritually able to deal with life's problems. And so in my brain, my kind of how the logic I had created, I'm like, well, I'll go on my mission, and I'll come back and I'll be more likely or able to marry a woman or survive the church, essentially. So I got my mission call, and it was funny. I remember. It was a crap day. Anywho, I opened my mission call, and I was called to Sao Paulo North. Same mission as my dad.
Same mission.
Yeah.
Same exact mission.
Yeah. And so I remember everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so inspired. Oh my gosh, it must be the Spirit. I mean, those brethren, they're so inspired. And then you think about it, and you're like, wait, don't they have that pulled up on the screen where my dad went on his mission? I don't know. Sorry, just putting that in there. Anywho, so I get sent there, and
up until your mission call, do you come out to anyone?
no, I had
Not
I told
yourself,
No one.
but
I
to
said to myself, yes.
So you, by then you kind of,
I knew I was. I'm like, I'm gonna be okay, and I was
I'm
very
gay, but I'm gonna fix it.
yeah, I'm gonna fix it. I'll suppress it. Like more again back to those like
White
physical.
knuckle it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, I'm strong enough. I mean, like that's what they teach you. They're like, if you can't do it, then there's something wrong with you. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna prove that I am worthy. I'm righteous enough that I can go on a mission and be okay.
Got it.
Okay, mission. Whew.
Not so great.
So, isn't one of the symptoms of PTSD having like recurring nightmares and like vivid flashbacks?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I think I have a little PTSD around this, so it's a touchy subject for me.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to get through it. I got to the MTC, and So here's the thing, like, because you remind me that some people will be watching that aren't members of the church. When you're on your mission, they take away all your coping mechanisms. You lose access to your family and friends. You lose access to alone time. You lose access to
Netflix.
well, yeah, like all those like media
Yeah.
of any sort.
Phone.
You lose
Any
access
connection to anyone.
yeah, like
human intimacy.
food. You like lose access to, like safe foods, which were important to me at the time. Like you're all those things are stripped away.
Even your exercise regimens.
Yep.
Can be disrupted.
Exactly, and that was another big deal for me, especially
Musical
with
instruments.
like you lose everything. And I mean, now that you're allowed to like text and call your family on P Day,
That's new.
which is new, but that was not the case for me at the time. Anywho, so I'm in the MTC, and I went to the Brazilian Sao Paulo MTC, and
in
it's
Brazil.
and so it's a culture shock. It's like all of a sudden you're in a place with all these things, and you're required to be in certain places at certain times and eat food that was not safe food for me, and so I lost weight. It was like more, which was very unhealthy, and so I was in a terrible position, and so that I was like already like, but essentially I was coping. I'm like, I was putting as much of the pain away as I could just to try to get through the day. Cause I'm like, this starts like day, what is it? Like 365 times 2. Like, and I just have to get through it all. Something interesting, like interesting story from the MTC is there's a sister who I adore. And like, we're still really good friends. And her personality, my personality, we just clicked. And of course we would chat, we'd laugh, we'd spend time together in the room when we had some free time. And it was like this healing balm for me from the pain that I was going through. And I remember being pulled aside by my instructors, and they're like, Elder Laing, like, we've had reports of people looking at you, and you two cannot spend time together because it looks like you're going to do sexual things. Like, and I'm like,
How embarrassing.
I'm like, what the actual? I was like, I wanted to scream right in their face, like, I'm gay. Don't worry, I'm not going to hit her. And it's just, it was so frustrating, and it was frustrating for her too. But she didn't know I was gay. I didn't. Anyway, but it was so frustrating because it was like one of my little spots, the lights of joy, was ripped away from me. And so what did I do? I clung tighter to the things in the church that brought me joy, which were like hymns. I'm like, okay, I'll sing hymns to myself. I'll play like, I'm like, I need to find spiritual. I'm just going to be even more spiritual, because then that will fix me. That will make me feel better. Like this pain that I'm in, this depression, this anxiety. And then I got out to my first area, and bless, like, call it tender mercy for the people who still believe or whatever it was. But thankfully my apartment was not Dad's case. It was a lovely apartment that I was able to have there. But I remember being in this small little area out on the outskirts of São Paulo, like not city, but like kind of like countryside. And it was bad. It was really bad. It was like pain day after day after day of like trying to like figure out like what's wrong with me, being attracted to my companion, like the pain, like the guilt and shame around that, and masturbation on top of it. Oh, wait, back up real quick. Sorry. Sorry, this is a little disjointed. I apologize. But first day in the MTC and in my mission field, my mission president, we're all sitting down. The mission president walks in. First thing out of his mouth is, "We're going to watch a video." Turns on a video. It's about sexual sin. Oh, okay. Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a little disjointed. I need to jump back.
Don't worry about it.
No,
One
bro,
more thing.
You're good.
I remember going in for my interview with the stake president before my mission to have my interview. And apparently my dad didn't get to him because he point blank asked me, it's like we were finishing up the interview and it was great. And he's like, something we need to take care of is like, lots of people have it before you go on your missions. Like, do you masturbate? And I remember looking at him like wide-eyed. I'm like, oh, what do I say? Because I'm like, I do. And I'm like, but here I am. Like, I'm broken. I'm hurting physically and spiritually and all those things. I'm like, I need to go on my mission. And I'm thinking it's a sin next to murder. If I admit to this, I'm not going on my mission. And all the shame of my family, of how they view me and what's going on there. I'm like, I need, and I lied. And I remember feeling so guilty. Like that just stuck with me.
Girl,
so
you did?
I did. Of course, guilty about.
I mean, like, it's
that I
bad.
lied.
It's bad, but
okay.
I'm kind of
You have to be proud of me. Thank
proud
you,
of you.
Mason.
Lied. Good. Continue.
But no, I'm feeling so guilty.
Because how are you going to get fixed if you don't go on a mission?
Exactly. And then
Catch-22.
yeah, exactly. And then go to the temple, and that's a whole experience. It's
Prayer circle, baby.
it was scary. Like going to the temple. It was just. I remember going in there being told it's going to be this amazing spiritual experience. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go in there and like see God, or I don't know, like it's gonna be amazing.
Angel
and then
something.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get there, and you have Satan breaking the third wall, like looking at you
In the movie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he's like, if any of you do not live up to these covenants, you make a house in these days, you'll be mine. And it's just, I just
Be in
remember,
my power.
I know, I remember, and then I'm feeling scared, absolutely scared. And there's no consent at all. I'm sorry, like that's jumping to kind of wide, but there's no consent at all because you're surrounded by family and friends that are watching you like, you like it, right? Like, this is great, isn't it? It's so spiritual. I'm like, no, this is a crap show. Like, what am I in? What am I getting myself
This is a
into?
bad musical
People are in a
theater
circle.
performance.
And anywho, so that was terrible. And so I got now jump back to my mission president. First thing he did video about sexual shame. It finishes and he goes, okay, we got to take care of that right now. So we're gonna have personal interviews today. I'm gonna start them right now. Like, pick someone off the front row and let's go get this done. And I remember sitting there, I'm like, I have to confess again. And I didn't. And that guilt carried with me. Because I mean, I was so scared of confessing that because I had never confessed anything to the bishop before because I thought it was evil. Anywho.
I just have to say, one of the most terrible things about Mormonism is what they do when a Mormon missionary enters the MTC.
Oh my gosh.
Because, okay, so there's all the Mormons that that are honest with their bishops or stake presidents leading up to their mission, and some of them will be not allowed to serve a mission because they're deemed sexually impure or unworthy. And then there's others that have to have their mission service delayed to the shame of their entire congregation. As everyone knows, well, your mission's been delayed 6 months. Everyone knows why. Some sort of sexual indiscretion. So then there's the rare kid that doesn't have any sexual exploration at all prior to their mission. And then there's a bunch that lie. And so they lie to their bishop, they lie to the stake president, and then they're allowed to serve their mission. So what the Mormon church does is it has this pressure cooker as soon as you're in the MTC or the mission field where the church like turns on those screws and says, and sometimes they'll even use this fake sort of spirit of discernment where they'll have all these missionaries in the room and they'll say, I have the feeling as a servant of the Lord that there are some missionaries here that have committed sins they have not yet repented for. And again, this goes back to the stuff that your dad was talking about. If this whole thing about like, if you are not worthy, if you have not repented of everything you've ever done, then you will not have the Spirit. And then there will be people who will be lost and damned forever because you were not worthy. And they turn on these screws so that then those who have not yet, quote, repented of their sins will be open and honest with their stake presidents or branch presidents or mission presidents or whatever. And that's where it gets really intense because number one, you're on the mission, but number two, you risk getting sent home to the total shame and embarrassment. Because if you leave and then, a couple of weeks later, you have this huge send off, your whole family, your whole ward, all your extended family, they send you off on this 2-year mission. And then all of a sudden you're home. Everybody knows why. And it's a shame parade that some people don't survive.
No.
And so that's when they turn on the screws and the guilt. So I just wanted to paint that picture for kind of what was happening to you.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think Natasha says it best when Natasha Helfer, kids either have two choices. What happens is either they confess and they enter the cycle of shame and guilt, or they lie and then they take that and they go to secrecy and they take that with them throughout their entire lives because like I have to hide this part of me because it's shameful. And so that's where I was at.
Both are awful.
Yeah, exactly. They're not good situations. Got to fix that. So anywho, in the MTC, get to the mission field, with this guilt, and then on top of that, all my coping mechanisms gone. It's hot. I am not eating well because in this small area, there's like.
Just to be clear, you lied to your mission president.
Oh, I did. Yes, point blank. Yeah, I'm like,
what did that do to your mental state?
Well, immediately I'm like, I am a sinner. Like I am like not just I am like on top of this I'm already nothing. But then it's like, well, there you go. I just imploded. Like I'm suddenly this bad influence in my mission. I am going to be hurting people and
I won't have the spirit
with me. And
How
then
can I teach?
Exactly. And anything that went wrong was immediately blamed on that. I'm like, because it's like confirmation bias. I'm like, oh, I'm looking for everything to prove how I'm feeling inside about myself. So that's exactly where I was at. And then I'm there in my first area with bless the sisters that gave us lunch. Unfortunately, there was not always lunch every day. And me being scared and also having restrictive tendencies, I wouldn't buy enough food to eat for breakfast or I would never have dinner, like because dinner just wasn't happen. So like extremely poor diet, like not enough, intense walking. Like I got to the point where like to like mentally like help myself, I'd have to walk. Like I'm like, Elder, we need to go, and just like go. I would like pick the furthest areas. Like this is where we need to go. Like because I need to move. Like, and I think that's like a symptom of something. I'm not sure, but
this is disordered eating behavior, and that's purging.
Yeah,
there's purging through throwing up food
and physical,
but there's purging through over exercising. They're both bulimic kind of behaviors.
Yeah, and so I do that, and then I remember. I was the first time in my life I ever considered suicide. It was like, and it was scary. Like, I like immediate just fear. I'm like, I've never been that bad before. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And that happened that one day, and it kept getting worse, and it happened. So, but then it happened once in the area, and then it happened one more time in the area, and then I was transferred.
Where you had heavy suicidal ideation?
Yeah, and exactly. And then that's once I was, and towards the end of that area, it started increasing in frequency. So from like one time to like, and then like a month or two in between, it became like 1 month to like a week in between each ideation to every night. Like I would. Not to be graphic, but just to show you what happens when you're put in this situation. Like I would imagine myself, because my body was evil. I wanted it gone. I would imagine myself falling on top of the church spire and like it impaling me, and like very vivid, like blood, gore, all of that, because that's what I deserved. And it's interesting because that's what makes you feel okay, because you're like, I deserve this, and imagining it happening, it's like, oh, it's a relief because it's finally like, yes, it's happening. It's confirming what I need to relieve this pain, to get out of it. And so that got worse. And then I transferred, and thankfully I had an amazing companion who, just like, I love him to pieces. I'm not going to name names who he is. But come to find out later, he's bisexual. So it was probably why we got along so well. He's amazing.
Attractive too.
Well, that led to a lot of guilt and other thing, but he was there talked a lot with me about things. I didn't talk about being gay with him, but we talked about all sorts of things in the church, and we talked about masturbation, like both of us. And he had a similar perspective to how I had it, like, oh, it's fine in certain contexts. And that was really cool, like to be able to have that kind of relief. But then I transferred, and losing him, I was put in charge of a district. Like I was district leader. Also, like it was opening an area, which apparently is like it to explain. It's like, yeah, it's a big deal. I was put in charge of teaching an English class and like all these things at once, and training at the same time. And so it was
training a young new missionary
from Argentina,
which is also an honor.
Yeah, who didn't speak any English, and so it was all these crap things at once. And I'm glossing over a lot of the terrible things because at this point, suicidal ideations were increasing like daily.
Had self-harm started?
Yes. Self-harm started even before my mission to relieve certain things. But
trigger warning, I guess.
I'm sorry.
Viewers and listeners. But we just did an episode on that.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like the biggest thing is like scratching and cutting. That was very like helpful because it's be able to relieve pressure or pain that's going on. But that started there, and like our high rise was our apartment was on a very high part of the building, and there were ideations with that. And so essentially those things, those ideations, all that going on was a way to like just to relieve like the pain I was in. And it's interesting, the thing that would always like keep me here was not wanting to save myself, but I don't want to put someone else through that struggle, that position to like, oh, my family will be sad. I don't want to make them feel bad that way. Or this poor bus driver, I don't want them to have that trauma. Or whoever has to like XYZ situation and pick me up. And so, or have to find my body. And so that's the thing. I'm like, eventually I'm like, no, I can't do that to my companion. I can't do that. And that's what kept me here. But it got too much. It was... Thanks. Sorry. I got to a point where I was going to do it. I had plans. And I as a last ditch effort, I called the mission president to tell him, like, we were going to have interviews, and I'm like, okay, I'll tell him how I'm feeling, because, and I put an ultimatum, like, if this interview doesn't go well, if I don't feel any different afterwards, I'm done. And I went and bless him. I don't hold him accountable for this or blame him. It's definitely a system of how the church does it. But I told him, I confessed to him about masturbation, all those things. Finally got it off and felt no different. No, none of the guilt was gone. None of the self-hatred was gone. And then I told him, like, mission president, I won't say his name. It's like, I'm not well. I need help. I'm having suicidal ideations. I'm like, I'm going to kill myself. And his response was, well, there are lots of elders who have mental problems, and we could get you on medication in the coming weeks. Like, we'll see about it. And it's like, I'll have you meet with my wife sometime, and you can talk with her about it. And it was just it didn't matter. It didn't matter where I was at, and I don't think he realized where I was at, and I don't blame him. But I guess the reason I share that is these people that are put in charge of you, like bishops and mission presidents, they're not trained psychologists, they're not trained therapists, they don't know the signs, they don't know the severity of that situation. And
also, it's looked down on many of them to send a missionary home.
Yeah.
So that they think of it as their job to keep you on a mission, whether that is necessarily safe for you or not.
Yeah.
it looks bad on them to have a bunch of missionaries going home.
Exactly.
So they're incentivized against your well-being.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember leaving the office, and I was so close. Sorry. Thankfully, his wife had the wherewithal after he went and talked with her. I'd love to have heard that conversation because I think she was pretty angry. She called me immediately.
She was angry, you think why?
With with him, for the fact that he brushed me off and didn't keep me at the office and let me try going home. She called me and it's like, hey, like I'm gonna get you in tomorrow. Like I need you to come back. And like I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, I can hold on. She's like, can you hold on till tomorrow? And no, actually, no, she didn't call me. I went home. I went home and I stayed alive in that moment. It was in the bed because I had the hope of, okay, I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. We had scheduled to talk with her the next day. I'm like, at least that's my last straw, and then I'm done. And I went and talked with her, and bless that woman, because she immediately broke down in tears and treated the situation with the severity of what it was. And she's like, she wanted me to stay there that night, but was able to like help me get home and safe, and had me call every so often to make sure I was okay. And with a promise of getting me in to see the, since I was in São Paulo North, which is like right by the church headquarters, like Kashangi, which is where the temple is. She's like, I'm going to the temple tomorrow with, the leaving missionaries. It was at the same time I was a transfer, and I want you to come with us, and we'll take you to the psychologist for all the area. So I got there and talked to him, and I couldn't get it. Like I wanted to go home. Like that was in my head, and like I need to go home, but I couldn't bring myself to say it to the psychologist. Thankfully, he was able to like realize that's what I wanted. He's like, is that like, eventually after some talking, he's like, do you want to go home? I'm like, yes, I do. And he suggested that, and went and told my mission president, he to take the blow. Like I suggest that he goes home. It wasn't his choice. And my mission president's like, well, let me ask him. It's like, we're going to go into the temple. I want you to pray about whether or not you should go home. I'm like, okay. And so we go into the temple. Of course I feel nothing. I'm like, I'm going home. That's what I'm going to do. And I went home. Was on a flight the next Monday, and it was. Did
you get a sense he didn't want you to go home?
Yeah, I did, and I like even when he did like an interview before you leave, like on the day to the flight, and he did an interview with me. He's like, you can still change your mind essentially, and like you can always come back. Like very, very much so, not wanting me to go, and I don't blame him for that. But it was that was just another thing. I'm like, I can't deal with that right now. Like. Please, like he didn't realize that my worth is like dependent on what he's saying. And like, I can't do that. And so, I did get home. And thankfully, yeah. So sorry. Now I'm back home in Maryland. And so here's the most amazing blessing, tender mercy, whatever you call what?
Real quick. We were in Maryland because, because Dad employment.
Yeah. Yes. And that's what I'm about to say. Yeah.
Sorry. My bad.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So thank you for sharing something so hard.
No, yeah.
That's really an important and a powerful excerpt. I just wanted to ask you, Britton and Mason, if you want to jump in on this. I want to just have you look at the camera and address one specific sort of apologetic claim that's always made. Because, the LGBT Mormon problem has been around for decades and decades and decades.
Because LGBT has been
60s and 70s, the electric shock therapy and all the conversion reparative therapy. But then it really accelerated in my experience with Prop 8. Because as soon as it was public knowledge that the Mormon church was it was hunting season on same-sex married people and Mormons, and the church really started ramping up its anti-LGBTQ rhetoric with Boyd K. Packer and the whole why would a loving Heavenly Father do this, and Dallin A. jokes and all that. Like those of us here in Utah just started seeing the LGBTQ youth Mormon suicides just rise exponentially. And in fact, they did rise exponentially, even though Utah does all it can to not keep statistics of LGBTQ Mormon youth suicide because they don't want to have to report on it. Anyway, as we started making a stink with this, and then there was Benji Schwimmer and Tyler Glenn and the research that I did, and then Encircle, and then Dan Reynolds and Imagine Dragons and Encircle and the movie Believer, as we started making a huge stink about this epidemic of LGBTQ Mormon suicide, then there was kind of this apologetic reaction, which is like, oh no, it's not the Mormon church, it's the altitude, or it's the region, it's the Rocky Mountain region, it's everywhere, it's a national thing. Like, Mormon apologists have worked overtime to say that there's no connection. It's unfair to tie LGBTQ Mormon youth suicide to the behaviors and the actions of the Mormon church, that those who do that are just taking a tragic thing and trying to pin it on the church with some agenda to kind of weaponize a tragic situation to then blame the church. If you, Britton, and then Mason, if you want to tag on, if you wanted to look into the camera and talk to the people who try and justify and excuse the LGBTQ Mormon youth suicide as something other than a natural reaction to the Mormon church's doctrines and policies and actions to LGBTQ Mormon youth, what if you had a chance to say something, what would you say?
Fake ass bitches, like, bruh.
Was it the altitude?
No. No. Sorry, it makes me so sad and angry because I didn't choose this. And my whole life I've been told I'm broken. I'm not broken. I'm not waiting for some resurrection to fix me.
What took you to that point? What was it, if you had to summarize it?
To what point? I'm sorry. But
what was it about your Mormon upbringing that led you to the point of not wanting to live anymore? Summarize it if you don't mind.
Yeah. The fact that, I want to get it right. That I'm not enough, that me, myself, just being me and who I am, that I'm worthless. And the fact that I'm not living up to standards that have been set out by a third party, and I'm not meeting these high demands, that's what led me to it. It's like, it's not why, and especially the fact, this idea that, well, if this life is just a blip, why not go to the next life? Why not get this over with? Because if this is just meant to be a trial and it's worthless and I'm supposed to be fixed in the next life, I better just die right now. Why not die? Because I'm not doing anything for this world. I'm useless according to the church.
Mason, your story's coming, but do you want to add anything to this?
It's just so frustrating, like, part of my language earlier, but, like, it's, like, so invalidating. It's, like, obviously everyone can have their own opinions about everything and but, like, these apologists, they've never been in our shoes. They don't know what it's like. And so it's just, it's so, like, angering, too. Like, just see these people go and, like, dude, honey, don't worry. Like, I don't know. It's just so horrible.
Because statements like that, what it says, it goes back to that pushing on. It's like, oh, we're not at fault. You must be broken. You must have a problem with you. It pushes, like, it's not a church's fault. These youth, these LGBT youth, they must be screwed up because they're the ones killing themselves. It's not. We have no part, and that's
like, like take ownership for something at least. Like it's not. It's like pushing like the things that are happening now are on other people, not us. Like what? It's just like they're so oblivious. I don't know. And I was like that too. And I'm sorry, I'm not judging people for being oblivious, but like teen shade, like, bruh.
It's like I deserve better.
And then there's a different version of this by like a Ty Mansfield or others that's like, hey, LGBTQ Mormons, just cling to Christ. Have faith. You can make it through this. You know, some people are alcoholics and some people are diabetics, and this is your cross to bear, but have faith in God, have faith in Jesus, trust in the church, and Jesus and the church will see you through. And whether it's celibacy or mixed faith marriage, you can do this. What would you say to that?
My biggest frustration, and one of the reasons why I feel so free to left the church, is that they teach you to give up yourself, and that you are nothing, and that you're dependent upon a third party, which is Christ. And that idea that you are broken and only if you hold on tighter that you'll be okay. That is, I deserve better. I deserve better in this life, especially when it's coming from a straight man who's had 2 wives at the top of some church telling me that I can't marry a man. That's fucked up. I'm sorry. And I'm not going to be part of an organization that does that.
And why won't Christ? Why can't Christ help you through?
Well, I'll let you know. I tried. I sure as hell did.
Did you cling to Christ?
Yeah. I mean, I clung to everything, every bit of church that I could possibly, and look where it got me. I almost killed myself. I almost left this earth, and I'm sure there's people out there who thought that might be better. And to them, I say, screw you, because it's my life, and I deserve better. But it doesn't. It's when you start looking for that person, like faith is one thing, is to be able to find peace in that. But to go and change and like who I am, no, I'm sorry, no. That is a part of me that it's like asking someone if that was born without a leg to grow a leg, and telling them they're evil and terrible and wrong for not having a leg.
Or have faith to regrow a leg.
Exactly. It's
Literally.
like God will fix you if you have enough faith. And then it goes back to putting the blame on the person because they must be broken because it's not working for them. And that's how I felt. I'm like, I'm screwing this up. God must not love me. Like, I didn't love myself. I hated myself. And I thought God hated me too because things weren't working out the way they were supposed to. So, yeah.
It's really unfair.
Powerful.
I'm really sorry you guys had to go through that.
Thanks. We're on the recovery path.
I mean, I feel like spiritual experience are pretty ubiquitous, right? Throughout humankind and development, right? And religions have either tried to co-opt it for better or for worse. And I would hope that the religion that we are so passionate about, that we have come from, can recognize that people who don't fit within the box of one specific sexual orientation or gender identity, that they have spiritual experiences too, and they want to understand why they're here and their creator. We all do. We want to do best by our families and be true to ourselves. And I just it's my prayer, that's Mormon language, but it's my hope that like people who have co-opted these different ideas about why we're here and where we're going can see that you two are just trying like everyone else to live up to your best identity and your best ideals and being authentic to that. And that there's absolutely no box that like a council of men in Salt Lake City who have never been through the things that you've been through should be putting you inside that box. You guys are too fabulous for it, to be honest.
Thanks.
So that's really heartbreaking that each of you have had in your own way, those different experiences. So my heart goes out to you.
And I was struck reading your outline. It seemed like God was kind of telling you were okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you were having to deal with the dissonance of like, if you were actually going to be listening to God and your own spiritual witness, you were actually okay. It was trying to navigate the difference between that and the messages the church was giving you.
Yeah.
And our LGBTQ research of surveying over 1,612 LGBTQ Mormons, over half of them received spiritual witnesses from their creator that they were just fine.
Yep.
It was the church that was the problem in those cases, not God, right?
So interesting.
And that's really interesting because like to kind of summarize it, I got back from my mission, and I'm going to skip coming out real quick just to get to that point. I I went to the temple and got here to Logan. Well, not here, but up in Logan.
After you came home.
After I came home, yeah.
Because you're still trying.
No, I'm still trying. Yeah, exactly. And I remember, actually, it was before that. I was in Maryland praying, and I remember being told by the Spirit that it's okay that I'm gay and that I can marry a man.
What?
Yeah.
The Spirit told you that?
Yeah, and it was confirmed again in the temple, like multiple times. And so I'm like, what is this? Like, this is what I have. And so at that point in my spiritual journey, I'm like, well, I'm gonna make the church work. And then I got to the point where I'm like, well, I'll marry a man and I'll just be a thorn in the church's side until they change things, because I'm thinking blackness in the priesthood, like it'll happen again with LGBTQ, at least where I was at the time. But that's ahead. And then that's exactly where it kind of meshes back with Dad's and my mom's story of leaving the church and all that jazz. But real quick, I just wanted to touch on coming out before we switch to Mason, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I got back, and it's not like getting home. I mean, it was nice because I finally had my coping mechanisms, getting my family there, but I didn't. Depression didn't go away. I mean,
you're also a disappointment.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and the beautiful thing, that's what I was trying to say, is they moved during my mission. I was there for a year, and so I didn't come back. I came back to a ward who didn't know diddly squat about me, and
so you didn't have the shame parade in your
none
home
of it,
ward.
and that was really helpful. So that I mean, if that had been there, I would hate to think what would have happened, because I was still suicidal, and so I went. We went and saw a psychiatrist, like not a church one, a medical one, because they didn't know I was gay yet. And she prescribed something. I was able to take some medication, which helped take the edge off, and which is amazing. And that's why I think medication has its place, because it helps you. For me, it helped me get to a place where I could like, whoa, okay, let's pick through this now. Let's dissect, because I hit rock bottom, and like once you hit rock bottom, you're like, we got to rebuild here. And so I decided, I'm like, I need to come out to my parents as gay. Like I need to tell them, and that was.
Bro, how'd you do that though?
It was an experience. Like I will mention, like, coming out is not something everyone needs to do. Like I just want any LGBTQ person watching this. Sometimes it's not safe to come out. Like sometimes you have to wait until you're in a place or a family or out of a home where you can actually do that and be able to like physically take care of yourself. So don't feel like you have to do that. But for me, I decided to, and I remember I like brought them upstairs to the loft in our house, and I just sat on the couch crying for like a good solid 20 minutes. It was a long time. They're looking at me like, did he kill someone? Like what happened here? Like it's like, it's something terrible. And eventually I just like, Mom, Dad, I like men, like I'm gay. And it was amazing. Of course my parents were awesome. Were amazing about it. Immediate outpouring of love. And
well, it's not, of course, because they're also raised Orthodox Mormons.
That's true.
So lots of Mormon parents you
don't get that always, yeah. Mm-mm. And so I was very blessed, lucky, call it what you will, to have parents who immediately accepted me and outpoured their love. And I'm sure, and I'll let them tell their side because it's very interesting, but I'm sure that's a shock too, because you're like, well, crap. Like everything I've learned about the church, now I have a gay son. You're like, what do I do with this? Anywho.
What did they say to you?
We love you. It was like my mom, like, it's like, we just love you. It's like, it was just like, I love you again and again. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like it was immediately like affirming. Like I like a lot of frustration, anxiety, and depression actually like not like went away, but like it relieved a bit, because a lot of that anxiety was around telling them. And I had people who loved me, even though I didn't love myself yet. So that happened. That was amazing.
And your dad too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. My dad, it was, yeah, very, very much so. I don't want to.
So this military dad.
Yeah. I don't
macho.
I don't want to spoil his story, that side of the story, but
from your perspective.
From my perspective, it's funny because he was immediately like, my son's not broken. Like, and if he's not broken, what is broken that's causing this? And so that was really powerful to me, because I immediately felt loved. Absolutely loved and cherished. And just as a funny side note, like I came out to each of my siblings.
What was that like for you?
Oh yeah, it was. I guess like it it wasn't a big event because, and the reason why, like, it was finally a relief to tell them so they knew, but it was awkward because now, because here's the thing, like, when you tell someone that, unfortunately, because how we're raised, we have these preconceptions. And so I just want, I think I repeated this multiple times when it came out. I'm like, I'm the same Britton, like, I'm the same person, like, I haven't changed, like, I've always been this way. And you don't want people to treat you differently. And so it's awkward to, like, kind of navigate, like, what do we joke about? What can we talk about? And then you're like, crap, like, I've made jokes about, they're homophobic jokes before, like, what do I say? And then, like, the guilt that comes with that. And it was interesting, like, as a family, because I told them, and then I told Quincy, and Quincy was great about it. Quincy's very much like, yeah, whatever.
Cool.
He's like, cool. And then Ashley was like, that's amazing. Ashley was very sweet. She's like, that's amazing. That makes me so happy. Like happy that I can actually find someone that would love me, and I can love them. And then Mason was my favorite person to tell because we were playing Mario Kart, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, Mason, gotta tell you something. And
He pauses the game and
okay, his reaction.
Playing Mario Kart.
Yeah, and so I'm like, Mason, like, I'm gay. Like, I like
he's
men.
like, I'm attracted to men. I'm gay, Mason. And I'm like, cool.
No.
I didn't even say anything.
You're like, can we just play? Like, that was your response. I'm like,
I love myself.
Okay. Well, now I realize, like, I'm sure, I'll let you tell your side of it, but I'm sure it was not fun. Like, when you already have older siblings and you're like, crap, like, another brother is doing something and it's me. So, anywho, but that was really funny telling Mason. And then my last thing I'll share.
What did you feel from his response?
Oh, from Mason?
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because Mason.
Really?
Yeah. Because
I feel bad.
No. Mason and I's relationship, I realize, like, Mason's actually, in my healing journey from the church, he's helped me a lot because I feel like, at least for me, my emotions in the past have been very dependent upon what other people think of me. And Mason, he don't give two craps what he, like, he'll say whatever.
Just say it.
Yeah, exactly. Two shits. Exactly. Like, he'll say things, he'll do things, and he'll be angry and mad at you. And he taught me how to, like, oh, well, he's mad at me right now, but in 2 hours when he's had food and some sleep, he might be fine. And so I'm like, to be able to, like, not internalize what someone else thinks of me. And so I've always been very grateful to Mason for teaching me that and helping me with that. He's like the perfect, like poking at me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how it goes. So yeah. But, like, last thing I'll share before I'll let Mason take the wheel. After I told my parents, they're like, oh, let's go to LDS Family Services. They have therapists we could go to. And so we found one. Oh my hell. So we drove out there. It's like a 40-minute trip. And this dude, bless him, but he was, like, very matter of fact. Like, I told him, he's like, okay. You're gay. Okay, let's talk about it. And he's like, okay. And he talks with me afterwards. And I told him about all the suicidal ideations, all those things. And he's like, And he brings my mom back in. And he's like, so here are your options. So, like, the way you can look at it is either you're broken and that you're going to be fixed in the next life, or you can look at it as some people do, that the church will change. Like, very much so. It was just, I left feeling like that was useless. Like, that was no help at all.
Why was it useless?
Well, because I feel like to me, like, I maybe put wrong expectations of, like, I'm going to go here and he's going to give me options because he's a church therapist. So he knows, like, mental health and the gospel. So he'll know how to reconcile this. He'll, like, give me the answer for that. And first of all, I recognize now therapists, that's not their job. They're there to, like, help you find the answers. But it was just very much so him pontificating. I could see that he was uncomfortable with the question, that he didn't know how to really deal with it. He's, like, trying to pull things out of his ass to, like, throw at me to help me out. And he's like, we can do telehealth or something to keep seeing each other. And I remember thinking, I'm never going back to that guy. It was just
Screw you.
It was pitiful. And it made me, it was like another drop in the bucket to see how the church handles that. Like, they're not equipped. They don't know. Even not all therapists that are in the church, because bless Natasha.
We love Natasha.
Well, not anymore, unfortunately, bless her. But we love her. Not that we don't love her. But lots of them, unfortunately, don't have those tools, and the church doesn't prepare them for that, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and the church's counsel runs counter to the entire mental health profession.
Absolutely,
and standards and ethics, because it's not a mental illness to be gay. It's nothing to fix. It doesn't go away. It can't be fixed. And it's a healthy, relatively normative part of the human experience. And so there's nothing that a ethical, competent Mormon therapist can do So they have to just give you nonsense mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
Literally.
Because if they're ethical, then they're violating their allegiance to the church. But if they support the church, then they're being unethical. So there's nothing they could do.
It's this terrible trap that burns people. So but and then jumping back, I got to a better place mentally and physically because I had small revelations along the way of I can date guys. It was first dating, and then like I could actually marry one, like, and all those things. And then I was kind of there when we jumped back into mom and dad's story. So that's where I'm at. I'll stop there and I'll let Mason tell his story, if that's okay.
Where do I start?
We can back up now.
When I was born. Just kidding.
It's a great birth.
Great birth. Let's see.
We were kind of just talking about way back when, so before his mission, and if you had any ideas that you were different from other boys, and then leading into your teen years.
Your adolescence, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe just the development of your ideas around your sexuality and your relationship with the church.
Okay, sweet. So let's say, here, let me pull up my notes. Because those are my help. Okay, so like around like 7th grade, like very end of 7th grade, like we were moving to Maryland. Rip me. But anyways, we were moving to Maryland, and I was thinking like, am I gay? But I was like, no. Like I couldn't. It's so like I couldn't be gay because it was a choice. In my mind, I was like, oh, this is impossible. And so what happens is like this isn't a thing. And so we're going, and I start school in Maryland when we get there, and it's horrible. Like just it's so I can't even, like, the schooling system in Maryland, not even the people there are just
The county we were in.
Yeah, the county we were in, and everything was just bad. And I was bullied, and I was like...
It's the South.
And I was like physically like abused at school, and like verbally abused at school, and it was just not a healthy environment.
Is that specifically because of like they could tell you had like maybe a different sexuality?
Looking back on it,
gender identity sort of manifestations.
Yeah, and so like looking back on it now, I was like, could it be? But I don't like want to blame it on homophobia. But at the same time, like, was it though? You know, but.
Yeah.
Because you seem like you've always kind of been this way, very outspoken, maybe like friends with a lot of girls into theater. I'm projecting, I'm guessing.
Stereotypically.
And the macho boys at school are not a fan of that?
Not a fan of that. And it was the macho boys at school who were like, we're going to beat this kid up, right? You know, and so it was just a toxic environment. And so finally, like, I came to my parents one day. I was like, guys, like, I can't go to that. Like, it's so bad there. And, I just say it's so bad there. Sorry, explaining everything now. I'm like, this is a lame story compared to yours.
No, Mason. No, your story has just as much value as mine.
But anyways, I'm like, I tell my parents, I'm like, I can't stay at this. Like, well, I don't say that. I say it's so bad at school. And I tell them everything that's happening, and they're like, Mason, do you wanna go to homeschooling? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so
you weren't safe.
No, I wasn't safe at school, and it wasn't good. And I obviously had some like friends there, but it was nothing like. At the time I was comparing everything to living in Washington. I was comparing like all my friends, my house, my like social life, everything. I was comparing to Washington
because you started first grade in Washington.
Yeah, I started first grade in Washington.
To 6.
Yeah, 7th grade.
7th grade.
All of 7th grade.
Yeah.
And
there are super good wards and steaks. From what I've seen, the Bremerton area has had some great wards and steaks over the years, right?
They really do.
And this is another part of it. The church in Maryland, it wasn't such crap. Like, it was, first of all, the building. That shit was. It was like.
Oh yeah, Annapolis. Yeah,
Annapolis. It was so weird. But anyways, people there were just horrible, and there was especially this one family that we had to deal with that was just not great. Not just because they were like controlling everything, and it was just a kind of a toxic environment there, and especially with the boys there, it was a very like bro kind of attitude, and I didn't fit into that. I wasn't a part of that, and so I'd hang out with a young woman, and I'd be like, why can't I like just hang with a young woman?
Go to young women.
Exactly. I'd literally tell my mom that. Mom was like, I don't know. I wish you could. and
Not the church for that.
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry.
No, you can keep your notes.
So yeah, so I did homeschool for about like over half a year. That wasn't good for my mental health at all, because while I was thinking like, I'm not gay, but kind of am. But at the same time, I was like, I'm doing homeschool and I have no social interaction. I have no
You
time.
seem social.
Yeah, I have no time except going to church and everything, and it was just bad in general.
You lost all your social like coping
Everything,
mechanisms.
because I'm very like, I like seeing people. I love seeing people, and so I like talking to people, and that's where I get I used to get my energy from and everything. And so not having that, it was bad. But that summer, I went to this. It was like a musical theater camp, basically, at BYU. It was called Young Ambassadors Singing Entertainers Camp, YASI for short, and it was the best thing ever. Like, I loved it.
Where was it?
It was at BYU, Provo.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
For theater.
yeah, and
Performers, basically.
I would go and I learned a bunch of dances and songs, and we'd sing songs, and like we'd have like this huge performance at the end of the week, and it was so nice because while I was there, I was like, I felt like I had like some place. I had like, because I wasn't finding it at church where everyone was finding, like everyone was like, oh, I have my church friends. Like, I don't have church friends, guys.
Assigned friends.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was just kind of, and so while I was there, and also I saw like tons of like gay, like people, lots of my, what do you call them? Counselors. They were gay. And so I saw this, I was like, oh, like, and there I kind of realized like it wasn't like a choice. And so I was like, And then later in November of that year is when Britton came out to me. And from my side of the story, this is what happens is Britton's like, Mason, I'm not attracted to guys. I'm gay. And in my head, I'm like,
You're attracted to guys.
yeah. Oh, wait, no, I'm not attracted to women. I'm attracted to
Definitely
guys.
attracted to guys.
No. And in my head, I'm like, well, shit. Like, this is like, and in that moment, I realized it's like, it's a possibility. It's like, you know, it's
okay.
It's a well, not okay,
No,
but like, it's not a choice. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I am gay. And so I keep going, like, I'm in oh my gosh. And like for the next month, like I didn't know how to like act around Britton, because like obviously he was the same, but it was like, but am I the same too? Like, and so it went on for, for the next month. And then we were still in Maryland, and church was just bad, and it was just like a shit show there. I hate Maryland with a passion, to be honest. The only good part of it was nothing. Just kidding. There was this place called Rita's. It was actually really good.
Was it a restaurant?
It was Italian ice. It was really good. Anyways, so everything there wasn't great. And in 2019.
This is 2 years ago, by the way.
Oh my gosh. But in 2019, it was around.
So your time at BYU, did you say that?
My side. Oh yeah, I totally skipped over that. I saw like a bunch of like other gay people. I was like, oh, like
gay Mormon men, probably returned missionaries.
Yeah. Well, it's actually. No, the ones at the time that I knew, because now one of them came out on Instagram and and he was a return missionary, and so, but that's when I was out of the church. But at the time, they weren't return missionaries or anything. They and they were living their best lives. And so I was seeing them, and I was like, everything is okay for them. Like, and one of my fellow, like, what do you call it, camp people? I don't know, like people who went to camp with me, he was gay and he was like totally happy. And so I was like, oh, that's it. Like, it was just like a total like switch up for me, because
you're meeting gay Mormon men.
Exactly.
Thinking what?
Wait, sorry, what?
You're meeting gay Mormon men.
And I'm thinking like, it's I don't even know what I was thinking, because it was just,
at least they exist.
They
and
exist.
They seem to be thriving, maybe.
Exactly. And so, where was I?
Well, thank you, BYU.
Yeah, thank you, BYU.
You did it.
And so 2019, it was December 25th. It was Christmas. And it was like 2 a.m. And I'm like, oh, I'm up in my sister's bedroom and I'm just like so sad because for the past like 2 years, no, a year and a couple months, I've been struggling with like depression, like suicidal thoughts and everything. And it was just,
You were feeling that too.
yeah.
Why?
And, well, because I was gay and it wasn't great. And even after that and stuff, I don't like touch on that because I don't like feel comfortable doing, but okay. Anyways, sorry. Anyways, sorry. It was like 2 a.m. My sister, she's like, Mason, what's wrong? What's wrong? And actually, I don't want to talk about it. Like nothing. And she's like, Mason, like, can I ask you something? I'm like, yeah. She's like, Mason, are you like Britton? Are you gay? I was like, yeah, actually, I am. Like, and I started crying because I was like, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, she's like, it's okay. Exactly how Britton explained it. Ashley was so welcoming. She was just like, that's okay. Like, everything is going to be okay. So I was like, thank you, Ashley. And so we like talked for a bit, and like 20 minutes later, we bought Britton. And we were like, hey, girl, hey. Guess what?
Surprise.
Yeah.
2 of us.
2 of us. But anyways, and so, it went on. And so for like months, Ashley was super kind about it, actually. She was just like, are you, like, she'd ask like every so often, like, do you think you'll come out to mom and dad? And I was like, I don't know. Like, isn't necessary.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's so funny because in my mind, I was like, Mason, you're such an idiot. Like, you already have like a gay brother who's already come out to them. So you literally already know everything is going to be fine. But in your mind, you're telling yourself, like, but what if, kitty girl? Like, what if? So anyways, it's like February, I think it's February 25th. Yeah, I remember. It's February 25th. And at the time, my sister and I were going to high school together. And she was a senior, I was a freshman. And there was this, like, break in between called, like, Panther time or something like that, where, like, you get a 30-minute break and you could go to any, like, classroom or the library. So Ashley and I would always sit with each other in our math class because we had the same math teacher. But we sit with each other. At that time, we were, like, eating lunch. And I was sitting down and I was, like, thinking to myself, I was like, you're never going to do it, Mason. Like, you're never going to do it. And so I was like, better just do it now, you know, like, rip the Band-Aid off, bitch. Like, and so I got up my phone and I text my parents, like, hey guys, like the same stuff Britton said, where he's like, I'm still the same person and everything's gonna be okay and I know Heavenly Father loves me at the time. and so I texted them that. And they text back and they're like, Mason, we love you no matter what and stuff. And later we talked that night. But
So you texted them. You came out through text.
I came out through text, the classy way.
I mean, it's safer because you're not right there with them. And so
I wonder if I bet I have the text pulled up. I can even find it.
Yeah, but it is, I think there's no problem with any which way you come out because it's whatever you feel safest with.
Yep.
For mom and dad, especially. She deep down?
Not there.
Okay.
And they were accepting.
Yeah, they were super accepting, obviously, because of Britton and stuff, but
Not because of me. They're amazing.
because I'm amazing.
Oh yes, you are.
But yeah, so I told them, and then after that, it was still like, it was rough because it was like, but who am I? Like, and so at the time after that, I started thinking, after I came out to them, it was almost sort of freeing because I started like thinking for myself, like aside from the church. And I was like, where do I fit into this eternal plan? And then it wasn't good. It was just, you know, like this, all the stuff Britton said, like, it's just thing after thing where you're just like, you try to find little loopholes in your life, and it's crushing because you're trying to find these like little bits of joy and happiness in your life to make you feel better, that you can make it to the celestial kingdom, like you can do the right things and stuff. And also at the time I was like comparing myself to Britton too. I was like, wait, I'm not as good as Britton or anything. And so, sorry. So I would think like, how am I ever gonna get to the celestial kingdom? Like, and like your whole reality is based on like the end goal to get to this. Now that I believe this imaginary place, it's just so rough. But yeah, and that's kind of where, that's like when I started kind of thinking I can't go back to church and stuff. But I don't know where you want to stop.
So you started thinking the church might not be true, or at least you couldn't be a part of it.
Yeah, and I couldn't be a part of it because it was just, I at the time Britton, I remember hearing Britton's like, sorry, he was gonna get married to a woman and stuff, and in my head I'm like, I can't do that. Like I can't get married to a woman. But yeah, do you want to keep going on to when like I was like finally, I can't do the church. So what happened is that year we also learned that we're moving back to Washington. Thank goodness. But we keep going. And so we're living there and we pack everything up and we drive to Idaho, stay there for like 2 weeks while they're like getting our house ready and on base in Washington. And so while I'm there, I'm just like, this is kind of like the pinnacle moment where I was like, I'm moving back to Washington. Everything's supposed to be better now. Why isn't everything better now? And so I was like, and so I got up one morning.
Because you were excited to leave Maryland.
Yeah, I was excited to leave Maryland. I was like, I thought everything was going to be fixed.
And you would come out.
Yeah, and I come out and like obviously things were better, but nothing was like truly like happy. And so I woke up one morning and I was like, I can't be a part of the church. Like in my head, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't deal with the church anymore. And so I just lay back down and I stay in bed the whole day. And I just stay there. And like my sister Ashley comes to visit me and she's like, Mason, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. My mom comes to visit me. I hadn't eaten all day. And so finally it's like 3:00 in the afternoon. And so, and Mom's like, come on, we gotta get you some food. Like, let's go to Arctic Circle. And if you don't know what Arctic Circle is, it's like this restaurant. They only have like in Idaho and Utah, but
like a Dairy Queen.
yeah, exactly. So we go to Arctic Circle, and I tell Mom and my sister Ashley, I'm like, guys, like, I can't like this. I can't do this anymore. Really, like, I'm so done. And there are a lot of other details like of like things at church that's happened and stuff, but like I can't do this anymore. And so that's when my mom was like, you should call Dad. Like Dad has some opinions about it too. And I'm like, but I don't really want to call Dad because Dad was the
Authority
figure, and he was the one who was like TBM, right?
Yeah,
like
gung ho.
Exactly, like Mormon all the way. And so I was like, I'm not gonna call Dad. Like, what do you mean? And so she was like, okay. And so later that night, I got a call from my dad, and he's like, hey Mason, like I hear something's going on. And then, and like still now too, like I don't tell my dad a lot of stuff of what I'm feeling. And so I'm like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Everything's going okay. And he's like, he's like, you can talk to me. I'm like, like, it's like, I can't deal with the church anymore. Like, it's not great, like for me at all. He was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I've been feeling the same way too. And in that moment, he's like, hey Mason, do you want to hear the truth about the church and stuff? And like at the time I was like, girl, what truth about the church? We already know the truth, honey. Like,
it's true.
And so I'm like, sure. And in like a 2.5 hour discussion later, he told me everything. Like he basically had
like the CES letter.
told me the whole CES letter, and I was like, oh. And like in that, like I felt, and after that,
do you remember some of the things? Like if you had to list off some of the things he told you.
Oh, like how Joseph Smith was a gold digger. His like, what do you call it? What do you call?
Sorry.
When you pray after young like people.
Oh, predator.
Yeah, like
pedophile.
Sexual predator?
A pedophile. Yeah.
Wow.
And also the Kinderhook plates and. What other things?
Book of Mormon.
Yeah, the Book of Mormon, and like how, and the other book that he based it off of, and like all the like
The Hebrews.
Exactly, and so he told me all of that, and I was like,
Book of Abraham.
yeah, and in that moment, like people don't understand it. Like,
What about the polygamy stuff?
the polygamy stuff. Oh, well, I already like known like kind of the polygamy stuff, but it was always like. But it was that time, and God was okay with it, and but in that moment, I was like, oh, I guess it kind of opened my eyes to, oh, this isn't like polygamy isn't right and stuff like that. And I was like imagine if you were married to someone and they went and married another person and another person, another person, another person, another person, and so he kind of put it in like perspective for me too. So yeah, and then, do you want to know anything about that?
And so what was that like?
So afterwards, like people don't understand like how integral part of like being Mormon is, like how much of your life it is, and so like my whole reality, like I don't know if anyone's seen Loki, like Loki spoilers, but like when you go in the timeline and you realize that your whole reality is like not true, like everything is being a lie basically. And so what happens is like my whole timeline of my whole life was like, what happened? But there was also another part of me.
It's like when Elphaba goes to Oz, right?
Literally, like she goes to Oz. Like, okay, if you haven't seen Wicked, so the Wicked Witch of the West, she goes and her whole life she's been thinking like she's been an outcast.
Because she's green.
Because she's green. And she's like, I will be fixed one day by this wizard.
He'll make me not green.
He'll make me not green. And she goes, her whole life she's thinking, I will be great one day. Everyone will love me. And she goes to the Emerald City. She meets the wizard. And it's all a lie. The wizard doesn't have powers. And she's just crushed in that moment. She's just like, everything I've been working towards, and like me, everything I've been working towards in life was like, it was just crumpled like a piece of paper. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I supposed to do this anymore? But at the same time, I was super happy. I was so relieved. Like, in the end, it was just me. It was like, oh, like I can make decisions for myself now. So at the same time of being like, my whole reality is a lie, but also being like, my whole reality is a lie. And so it was great. And afterwards, I went up to my mom. She was in the guest bedroom at my grandparents. Like, mom, like, how do you feel about this? And my mom at the time, she was like, I'm still trying to work through something. I was like, Mom, it's great. Like, I don't have to do it like anymore. And she's like, I'm so happy for you, honey. And so it was just great. It was amazing.
And terrible.
Yeah, and terrible at the same time. Yeah.
Did you ever have a defying gravity moment?
Well, that's what happens. Like you realize like there's nothing tying me down. There's nothing like I'm morally obligated to do anymore to like be seen in the eyes of the wizard or God. Like I don't have to be great anymore. I can just be myself, and I can.
Through accepting limits.
Exactly.
Someone says or something.
You want to say the lyrics that mean a lot to you?
Well, I can defy gravity. I can be who I want to be. And it was great. It was amazing. I love Wicked. It's so good.
One of my favorite lines is, "So long I've been afraid of losing love, I guess I've lost. Well, if that's love, it comes at much too high a cost. Because that ain't love."
It ain't love.
Chills. Yeah.
It's a great musical.
But yeah, that's what happened, and then that's where it kind of comes with mom and dad too. But.
So what did it mean to you the Mormon Church is big on talking about pioneers.
Yummy.
What did it mean to you to have a brother in your case kind of pave the way?
It was so nice. Like, it was like that, like following someone in their footprints, like in the sand. You're like, oh, this is pretty easy now. But at the same time,
Yeah, I was going to say.
yeah, at the same time, it's like you're also making your own footprints, and it's like, oh, this is really hard too. But it was.
And something I want to say is, poor Mason here, being the youngest child, has had to always try to find how he can be him.
Play catch up.
And yeah, and to get the love that he deserves. And I realize that it's also pretty crappy when you're like, crap, well, this is something about me that was beautiful in my identity. And it's that growth of learning that even though Britton may be gay, doesn't diminish my identity, who I am, either.
If for a lot of listeners out there, if you don't know, I'm a bit of a narcissist. I do love myself.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
And let's say I have good self-confidence.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so quirky. I'm so unique. But then I'm like, wait, I'm not quirky and unique. Britton's gay too. And so and so at the same time,
Don't steal my spotlight.
exactly. At the same time as me trying to figure out like, but I'm not Britton, I'm gay. I'm Mason and I'm gay.
Yep.
So yeah,
You're pretty damn awesome.
pretty great. It's also nice to like have him do it because like we can like relate to a lot to each other.
You're like, girl, please.
Oh yeah, and it's just it's great.
Was it validating to either of you to
Yeah.
have the other?
I actually, it's funny. Like when I think back, when Mason told me, I did have a tiny bit of that same feeling. I'm like, bitch, that's mine.
Like, what do you mean?
And it's so stupid. But now I'm like, no, it means so much to me, because Mason and I now, like, we were able to like watch the same shows, like RuPaul's Drag Race and other things, and like connect. And it's just, it makes me so happy to have someone who understands me and who's family. And because my family has always been, that's another thing. My family have always been my friends, because we've moved around so often that I didn't have time to like set roots and have like year-long friends. So my family's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great. We can like relate to each other really well too.
All right. Well, that was beautiful. Well, I guess we can bring your parents back on and have them talk about their faith journey. I don't know how much time we have left, because I know your dad's got to get to the airport at some point. But their faith journey is an important part of the story. But that was such an amazing, vulnerable, and powerful story. The whole thing is gonna be so useful, and there's so many clips we can harvest from that for TikTok and for YouTube as well. Anything you guys want to say kind of to close out this part of the story? If you want to look at any of the gay kids out there or closeted gay kids out there and give them some final words of advice.
Yeah, I mean, do you?
Honestly, like, oh, sorry. It's all a shit show. Like, your whole, like, you think, oh, I'm going to come out and it's going to be amazing and everyone's going to love me. No, that's not how it works. And so it's like, I guess, don't have a false reality of what life is. Don't think it's just going to be all hunky-dory after you come out, or after, like, you get a boyfriend or something. Like, it's always going to be life, and you're going to have your moments where you're like, it's so sad and depressing, but you're also going to have your moments of like, hey, like, this is pretty grand and great. Yeah.
Has coming out been better than not coming out?
For me, yes. But for some people, it's not. It's not what they should. I mean, I have no control over what other, like, it's
Maybe not safe for
For
you.
you,
not
though.
safe for them. Yeah.
For you, how's it been?
Oh, it's been amazing. It's been great. Like, I can, like, tell my parents things, and we can like joke and laugh around, and it's hard to put into words how much of a part of your life it is. And to keep that from someone, it's painful. It's really painful. And so to like have that out in the open, it's great. It's amazing.
My advice would be the second anyone tries to shame you for being you, it's like they're not worth your time. That organization, that person, it's their loss. Because if someone doesn't like you, honestly, it's really their loss because you're damn awesome.
Yeah.
And go find people who do.
Unless they pay your bills.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Unless they pay your bills, pay them bitches no mind.
Lovely quote by RuPaul.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right. So I guess the next step is the Kelly and man, my brain is foggy. So Kelly and Heather Laing lose their faith. I think that's going to be part 3 and kind of dealing with the aftermath. So thank you so much, Britton and Mason, for this amazing part 2. Hope you've enjoyed parts 1 and 2, and join us right back for this 3rd and final part. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be epic, and it's going to be really instructive for those of you who are trying to make sense of the Mormon Church and what it all means. And for those who love the Laing family and or want to understand what happened to them, you're about to find out. So stay tuned. Thanks so much. And Kara, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, this was again speechless at the end of another hour of the Laing family. You guys are awesome.
Thanks so much. All right. Don't go away. Come right back for part 3. Thanks, everybody.